So I will call the Planning Commission meeting to order for April 23rd, 2014. And to begin with, please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Yes, Commissioner Arkin.
Here.
Commissioner Eisenan.
Here.
Commissioner Pilch.
Here.
Chair Donaldson.
Here.
And for the record, Commissioner Moss is absent this evening.
Okay. Good. All right. The next item is the consent calendar. There are 3 items. They are the minutes from our meeting on October 15th, October 30th, and November 13th, 2013. Personally, I missed 2 of those meetings, and I will abstain on voting for those. But could we have a motion to approve everything?
Motion to approve the consent calendar.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. I will vote yes on November 3rd, on October 30th, and abstain on the November 13th. No, I'll vote yes on October 15th and abstain on 30th and the 13th. All right. Thanks for putting the minutes together. That's good, I know. Okay. All right. The next item on our agenda is public comment. This is an opportunity for anyone in the audience who would like to address the commission on an item that's not on the agenda. If you're here for something on the agenda, you'll have your chance later. Is there anyone who'd like to come forward at this point? I see no one, so I will then move on to our action agenda. The first one is planning application 13089, and this is for a project at 1111 Cornell with an addition and a second unit. Let's see, I guess we'll...
I note that I'm recused on this item, so...
Yes, okay. All right. We'll get you when we finish. Thank you. Is there a staff report, Ann?
Yes. This application was continued both from the March 26th and April 9th Planning and Zoning Commission hearings. So this is before you again this evening. The applicant is seeking design review approval for a 2-level addition at 1111 Cornell. The subject lot is 5,000 square feet with an existing home that's approximately 960 square feet in area and contains 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. The home was built in 1915. The applicant is proposing a rear 2-level addition, which will include a 1-bedroom second unit, about 582 square feet in area on the lower level. This lower level will also include a bedroom and bathroom for the main residence. The upper level addition will include a new family room, master suite, a half bathroom, and a rear deck. Altogether, this will result in a 5-bedroom, 4.5 bathroom home, 2,550 square feet in area. 3 off-street parking spaces are provided in the attached garage. 2 of the spaces are in tandem to serve the main residence, and the single space will serve the secondary unit. There's a rather lengthy list of changes that were made from your previous review to what was submitted on April 3rd. This includes a new landscape plan with bay-friendly plantings throughout the entire property, a new bay window detail at the rear of the home of the master suite, a reduction in driveway width from 18 feet 10 inches to 16 feet, a new canopy over the second unit entrance, a separate side yard for the second unit, which runs the length of the home and will provide 640 square feet of outdoor usable area for the occupant. New concrete paths around the perimeter of the property. The deck has been relocated to face into the rear yard. Previously, it was facing into the neighbor's yard. The hand railings and posts for the front porch have also been redesigned. The family room has been expanded beyond the existing north wall and will have a window to match the front elevation. Previously, the plan showed a second bedroom in that second unit, which has been eliminated. A new window has been added on the south elevation for the second unit to provide more light into the space. and the family room on the upper level area has been reduced. Up to this point, the applicant had worked with the next-door neighbor to resolve some privacy concerns related to the deck and window placement on the north elevation. It's our understanding that that was done to mutual satisfaction. In addition, provisions have been taken to provide privacy landscaping on the side that is shared with the neighbor. We may have a technical issue. We can get this up. And so with that, we are recommending approval of the project, and the applicant is here, the neighbor is here as well.
Okay, good. All right. Let's see, would the applicant like to come forward and address the commission? Be great. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm glad to come back and answer some questions that you may have. And as Ann just mentioned, we have worked with the neighbor and to reduce the size of the house, and also we configured the deck, and we have reached some consensus with the neighbors, so they're in support of this project right now.
Okay, that's good. All right. Any other questions for the applicant?
Just one question. If I'm reading the plans correctly, the rear deck is mostly covered by roof. There's a small section that's not covered by the roof. Is that correct?
Yes. Mhm.
Yes.
Are you looking on
Okay.
A4? John, A4?
Yes.
Okay. I got it. I see it there. Okay, that's good. Any other questions right now?
No.
All right. We may have some later.
Okay.
In fact, I think I may, but we'll, right now, why don't you, let's open the public hearing and
Okay.
then we'll move forward here.
Okay. Thank you.
Good, thank you. All right, is there anyone who'd like to address the commission on this, or do we have any speaker cards, Ann?
I don't have any speaker cards at this time.
No speaker cards at this point. Okay, would the neighbor, you were here last time, I know, so at this time, you don't choose to come forward, that's fine. Okay, that's good. Anyone else who'd like to address the commission on this item? All right, if not, then I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. So, is there anyone who wants to start the discussion?
I had a quick question for staff about all of these changes have happened since we recently reviewed this project. Is that correct? These were all minor. And all of these
Yeah.
changes were made since the last time we reviewed this project.
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to clarify that. Should I continue?
Sure.
I'm inclined to approve this. I think the changes seem reasonable and are in the interest of good design. The bay window adding square footage to that one bedroom. I hadn't remembered seeing that there was a separate yard for the second unit, but that also makes sense. It gives privacy to the family as well as kind of allocating outdoor space to the second unit. All in all, I'm in favor, but I'd be interested to hear any other comments from my fellow commissioners.
Were you not here for the original presentation?
I wasn't here for the first one, but there was a second. This is the third time, is that correct?
Oh, I thought this was only the second, but I'm mistaken.
Yeah, this is only the second. We did a presentation at the last hearing, but the applicant was absent, so it was
Yeah.
continued to a date certain.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I
Right.
apologize.
Yeah, we heard briefly from the neighbor at the last meeting, but we didn't take any action. And
I am heartened that they worked with the neighbor to resolve any concerns and.
yeah, that's good. Yeah. Nick, do you have any thoughts?
No, I don't. I am inclined to approve as well. I don't think I have any specific comments other than I think it's a nice design, and I very much appreciate the applicant and architect listening to the input of the commission. I think that's it.
Okay. Yeah, I had a question here, I think, for the applicant, and it could affect the neighbor too. One of the things I noticed is that I think it's the study on the ground floor, does not have any windows in it at all. And if it did have windows, it would face that north side. I'm interested in your thoughts about that, and won't that, is that acceptable to you, or is that, I question whether I question the wisdom of that design, of having a study in there that doesn't have any light coming in, even with small windows up high or any windows. But you could have your reasons for doing that, so I'd like to hear from you about that.
Thank you for asking these questions. In fact, we propose to have 3 high windows at the beginning, but the neighbor objected it, and they just concerned about the privacy issue, so we make a compromise, even though we don't believe that it would create some privacy issue to them, but in order to move the project forward, so we just decided to eliminate that. So if you can see from the north elevation, we have 3 high windows for the upper floor,
Right.
and we try to have
I
3
believe there's a bedroom.
high windows the same for the
upper
lower floor to provide
The
some
upper floor is
natural
a
light.
family room then? That's a
Yeah,
family room
right,
there?
right.
Okay, all right.
So
That would have good light
the
then.
neighbors here today, I don't know if they
Yeah.
can change their mind to allow this, because we don't think that it will create any privacy issues. Yeah.
All
So-
right.
That's I'm glad you pointed that out. I
Yeah.
had not seen that, and
Hmm.
I'm inclined to side with the architect on this one.
Yeah.
I think that a window, at least one window, would greatly enhance that space. Otherwise, there's only the sliding door to the rear that provides light.
Yeah.
And we believe it will provide some visual interest to the
And
elevation
then, and
too.
there's a
Correct,
6-foot
yeah.
fence, there's a
Right.
6-foot fence close to property
Right,
line
yeah.
there.
Mhm.
And, you know, I'm worried about just having that really dark room unless you're going to have a
Right.
video game center or something in there.
Right. Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right, I'd like to offer the neighbor an opportunity to talk, we'd like to hear your point of view on this if you have any strong thoughts about it.
Sure, my name is, am I limited to 3 minutes here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's not counting down.
Pardon me?
Am I limited to 3 minutes?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Mhm.
My name is Aaron Levin. I'm the neighbor to the north at 1107 Cornell. I actually have one question. This guy, the other council member, David, I believe,
Yeah,
he sat in on the first session, and when Stacy wasn't here, why has he switched? Whereas Stacy has sat in on this one, but she didn't see the first presentation. That
There just needs to be 3 commissioners,
I
and so
see.
we rotate around as need be.
I see.
David might have been,
I think that's really unfair. I'd like to say, because
Well,
there's no
yeah.
continuity for the. But at any rate, let's talk about this. I just wondered because I thought maybe
Yeah.
he was excused for a certain reason. The first plan, if you remember, had the deck on the side. We could
Mhm.
go back to it.
yeah. Mhm,
Facing me.
mhm.
And, you
Right.
know,
I
my-
appreciated that.
just so you know, my bedroom exits kind of around here.
Okay.
Current house ends around here.
Mhm.
You know, you guys are aware, it ends around here, and there's a side deck.
Right.
It's like, so my bedroom is like right exiting there from the sliding glass door.
Mhm.
And the deck had been there.
Uh-huh.
That's where the deck had been in
Yeah.
the prior.
Yeah.
The deck's now been moved to the back.
Right.
However, it has been doubled in size.
Yeah.
My initial complaint was that the deck was overhanging right where my bedroom exits, essentially. So this new design, the deck has doubled in size, and the property has actually been enlarged, pushed out closer to me in lieu of the deck. Okay, the area that the deck used to take up is now the quote-unquote study. So in compromising, Tom has worked with me, you know, and I give him credit, and that's why I'm not up here protesting, and I'm fine to let it pass, you know, as two council members have already asked for it. You know, by providing the privacy screen, but you know, the deck's doubled and the wall's closer to my property now. That's not really the resolution I was looking for. All I got for it was a privacy screen.
Yeah.
I understand there's a fence or shrubbery, this and that. So in the initial design that Tom submitted to Ann, okay, I'm saying revised, there were no windows in here. Okay, the day before the meeting, he submitted a new plan to her. And please ask Ann about this, okay? I asked Tom, are there any changes in this plan from the one we discussed and looked at? He said no. However, these windows appeared in the new plan. I don't believe Tom was trying to, you know, I don't believe it was malicious. I don't believe he was trying to sneak it in. It's probably an honest oversight.
You're talking about the windows on the second floor.
I'm talking exactly about the windows we're talking about. There were two windows in. Me and Tom sat down after the first meeting.
Yeah.
We looked over a plan. We agreed to that plan. That plan is exactly as you see right now. At the last minute, Hail Mary, he submitted a new plan to Ann. Okay, which contained these windows, though it was miscommunicated to me.
What was that?
Then I reviewed it and I said, "Come on, let's do the plan."
I'm sorry, which windows
These
are you talking?
windows,
So which windows are you
the
talking
bottom
about?
I'm
floor.
talking about I'm talking about the windows you would like. There were two windows. If we
That's
like
a study, in the study.
in the study, yeah. I'm talking about the
Yeah.
windows on the lower level.
Right.
So this is the history. I understand it does not necessarily justify the decision, but this is the history of how we got here. So I said,
Yeah.
Tom,
Yeah.
please return the plan to what we
Well,
agreed to.
So the architect pulled those out because of your concerns. And I think that the architect should get credit for that.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that I think it's a concern from a planning standpoint.
Yeah.
For us, I'm worried about us approving a home with a room with no light and air.
No, I understand, and it's
It's
you know.
just a matter of sort of good design and good public policy in that way.
I understand, and you know.
And I recognize your concerns. I know you are very close, but it's so common all over Albany to have 3 or 4 or 5 foot side yard setbacks, which means the houses are 10 feet apart or less.
Yeah.
It's so common. And this problem does occur frequently. I haven't, in my experience, I haven't seen it addressed by eliminating all windows in a room. I'm not sure that's a good policy for us to take, just cut out all the windows. The windows that he's put on the second floor, the high windows, are really very effective for ensuring privacy, because it's very, very rare that people look out those windows. I mean, they let in light and air. They're not full, and they're quite effective that way. I'd be in favor of at least one in that downstairs room, just to let some light and air into it.
I totally understand and appreciate your point of view.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah.
But I'm glad you brought up, you know, what's common in Albany.
Yeah.
Because I'm facing a house that is more than doubling.
Yeah.
I understand this is a condemned property and there's problems, but that's not the anything is better than what you got is not a valid argument. That is not a reason to take action, okay? Because a cleared lot would be better than what I have, but we're not going to leave it a cleared lot.
Yeah.
So with that one out of the way, I'm facing a huge house next to my little 1,100 square foot house. That is not common in Albany either.
Well, it is.
Well,
pretty common.
Maybe we're living in
It
two different
happens fairly
towns, but I'm
frequently.
driving down the street and
And
I
of
see
course, you have the right to expand your house too. I mean, you're way below the zoning allocations for your lot in terms of the floor area ratio and lot coverage and the height and all of that.
Well, I have a much smaller
You have
lot.
that right to do it, or you or
I
future
understand,
owners
and he
do.
has the right to
And-
build to the
And he
maximum of
has
the
the
law.
right to build within that zoning envelope.
But you guys are dealing with aesthetics. You guys are dealing with design.
Yeah.
It is totally legal, to build a fortress with no windows. I mean, you guys wouldn't let it go, but I'm talking about the letter of the law. It is legal to buy a cement box to the limits, but that's not what it's about. With that said, I totally respect Tom's right to develop. I respect your guys' design sense. I would not want to be in a windowless room. My question would be, maybe you should take it back and not make this weird little room, like the other design. We got a room, so it's got to have a window. Another solution is to not have the room there. But with that said, I respect your guys' opinion, and that's where I'm coming from. I'm going to protect not having a room 10 feet away from where my bedroom is, which is a sliding glass door. It's not an unreasonable request, though I do understand the designs,
Yeah.
no one wants
All
a windowless room.
All right. Well, I think we understand your point, and I think you've made it well, and appreciate your your reasoning.
Thank you for listening.
And your approach. So, okay, that's good. Thank you. All right. So, commission, where do we want to go on this?
Well, I would suggest that, I don't know how to do this, but I would suggest that we approve it and somehow allow a window to be placed in that room.
As part of design review, we could require that a window be added, and then ask that the plans be reviewed by staff to confirm our intent, and bring it back to us if necessary. But I don't think that would be necessary. So I think in the earlier design, certainly the architect should be able to follow our direction.
And do we want to specify if it's one window or two, or perhaps one window as a compromise?
Any thoughts on that?
Since the neighbor would like none.
Well, I'm looking at the floor plan, and I think it would be more balanced with two, but I wanted to back up a little bit, if I could, and just address the concern about, I think it's a valid concern that there are many solutions to having this wall kind of less stark or not having it there at all. And in looking at the floor plan, I did want to respond that it does seem like it's a balanced floor plan, that removing that study below would either require removing square footage above, which maybe
Right.
the neighbor is in favor of, but I also think that it doesn't make for a good floor plan. And so I wouldn't be in favor of that in this case, because having that extra space below kind of grounds the upper floor.
Yeah.
And so in this case, I am inclined to go ahead and allow the additional windows, because I think in the end, it's in the neighbor's best interest to have a more cosmetically appealing elevation, and that even if there's windows there, there can be draperies, there can be, but it breaks up the mass of the siding, and when you're kind of in a monolithic, when you're just looking out at a wall that's just all the same material and it's not broken up, it can be a little bit less attractive, and so I think in this case it benefits both sides. Plus, the windows have a reflectivity, they reflect the sky, they reflect the bushes, that, whereas that siding won't do that, and it'll be more flat. So I'm inclined to go for two.
Two, yeah.
Because of that.
And
I know what
smaller windows up higher, so that it
Well, what-
would appear workable to
The
you.
one window is in the stairwell, the one on the
Right.
right. And I would be inclined to do two under the windows to the left and actually make that a larger window that would be better for the stairwell.
Sorry, no.
So there's three small windows. They're not all in the same room. The left two ones are in in the,
Stairwell.
see the plan on the left
yeah.
in the family room,
Yeah.
and then the one on the right is in the stairwell. And having that, so you're gonna come down to that landing, and it's just gonna be all wall.
Yep.
And I think having that be more glazing would be more attractive, but I also think it's gonna be more reflective to the neighbor as well. So I would be inclined to make that a larger window in addition to, or instead of, it's,
So you're favoring 2 windows, a larger one in the stairwell, and then a small, higher one in the study. Is that
so,
right?
I'm sorry, 2 smaller windows in the study and a larger window in the
Oh,
stairwell.
I see. Okay.
There may be a reason architecturally why there isn't a larger window there, but I would be willing to allow for that.
And currently, there's a small window proposed in the stairwell on the second floor.
It's up high, so you would,
It's up
when you're
very
standing
high.
at that landing on the second floor, you would see out, but there would be a huge amount of wall as you
Yeah,
come
below
down the
that.
staircase.
Yeah. So
and hit
you're,
that mid-landing.
so you're talking about expanding that window, the
Yes.
second floor window, to be a little larger.
The window on the right,
Yeah.
to be more of a standard window.
Uh-huh. All right. I understand that. I think that's right. It's a good idea. And then a window in, and then two small high windows in the study.
In the study. There may be structural reasons, there may be a shear wall that's coming in there that would
Uh-huh.
prevent it, but
Where would you place those windows here?
Yeah.
I think
Two
they'd have to
windows,
go
two
directly
small windows
below.
there.
Oh, no, it would have to be here, I guess.
Yeah,
This is the stairwell.
yeah, yeah.
I see. I see. So there would be a rectangle of small windows and then a larger window in the stairwell.
They'd be
What you're suggesting.
up high in the stairwell. Yeah. All right.
having said that, it's not a requirement, I just, as an architect, I see that, and I know that I live in Albany too, and I would not want to look out on a flat wall that had no relief to it or change in
Yeah.
material at
No,
that
I
level.
have- Yeah,
So how about we leave it up to the architect to allow 2 small windows in the study?
yeah.
And allow a change of the window
Window,
size in
of the
stairwell.
window in the stairwell. That's fine with me. Fine with me. Can craft a motion?
Yes,
No.
we'll do that. Hold on, let me get to the right.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so I move to approve planning application 13-089, design review for an addition and second unit at 1111 Cornell, with the option to add 2 clerestory windows at the, what are we calling this? The study, the lower level study,
Uh-huh.
and possibly modify the window in the stairwell
Yeah.
at their discretion.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further comments or discussion? I think we're okay on that. All right. All right, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And no one is opposed. All right. So your project has been approved. There's a 14-day appeal period. And what we'd like to ask you to do is to make these revisions in the plans that we've specified and meet with staff and to verify that as well. And that can show up in the final design. All right. And if there's any questions or problems with that, then, and you could bring it back to us. Yeah. So, all right. All right, all right. That's very good. Another thing that's happening here is that this really old and dilapidated building is being fixed up. And I think that's important. That's makes this an important project. All right, great. David is back. David, did you sit in on a meeting for 1111 Cornell at one point? Was that necessary? Oh, uh-huh.
No, I've always
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I don't know. Unfortunately, the neighbor thought that you'd been here at the first meeting. No, must have been Phil he was thinking of or something, I don't know. Yeah. All right, okay.
Because they
All
look
right.
so much alike.
The next item on the agenda then is 1074 Peralta, which is planning application 14010, which is a second-story addition. And do we have a staff report?
Yes, the applicant is seeking design review and parking reduction approval for an addition and renovation at 1074 Peralta. The subject lot is 4,375 square feet, and the existing home was built in 1930. The home as it stands today is just shy of 1,100 square feet with 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. The applicant is proposing to add 775 square feet total. This includes a 279 square foot addition for the first floor and a 496 square foot second story addition. The first floor addition is located at the rear of the home, and the first floor will be reconfigured to include a renovation of the existing kitchen, bathroom, creation of a new family room, and of course stairs to the new second floor. The second story will include a new master bedroom, a study, and an additional bathroom. The house is craftsman style in appearance, and the addition has been designed to blend with the existing architecture. The second story addition will be set back 35 feet from the front building elevation. The home has decorative elements including front gable roof, which has been designed to carry over on the second story. Hardy plank horizontal siding with trim that matches existing features is also proposed. There's also louver details on the existing home, which will carry toward the east and west elevations of the second story addition. Bracket details under the gable are also proposed to be mirrored on the addition. And there's an existing bay window on the south elevation, which will be replicated on the south-facing second-story addition for consistency. I believe altogether this will result in a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home. The interesting thing, the applicant has applied for a parking reduction. This is one of the few streets in Albany where parking is accessed from the rear of the property off of Tevlin, more like an alley. So the driveway that actually faces Peralta measures only 5 feet 5 inches in width, so there's absolutely no room to get a car through there, but they do have a code-compliant legal parking space at the rear of the property. With that, we recommend approval of the project, and the applicant is here to answer questions.
All right, any questions of staff? No? All right, then I'd like to ask the applicant or applicant's representative to come forward if you'd like to address the commission about your project.
Hi, my name is John Sueda, and I have a wife named Sophie and a 3-year-old boy named Kai, and another baby on the way in about a month. And we moved to Albany about 3.5 years ago before my first child was born because we heard about the good reputations of the schools, and we have since come to love our home and love the neighborhood and love that we don't have to walk or drive anywhere really to do what we want. And as I said before, we have a growing family and would love to stay in the home we have right now and live there for many years to come. So that's sort of the situation in regards to this proposal.
Okay, are there any questions of the applicant?
I was just curious about if you were going between Hawaii and California.
No, I grew up in Hawaii, and my dad's an architect, so yeah, it just made sense. I actually only go back once a year for Christmas.
That sounds terrible.
Well, if Phil were here, I know he would admonish your father for using his Hawaii seal in California. So on his behalf, I'll mention that.
My reaction was that the plans are very, very detailed and almost ready to go to a contractor.
Right.
Yeah.
Just at one point, we actually did talk about the fact that the architect has a Hawaii license but not a California license, so they are aware that they will have to find someone locally to stamp.
No. For a single-family home in California, anyone can design it.
Oh, you don't have to be licensed
No,
by the
not
state?
anything up to 4 units.
Oh, I did.
Oh, that's nice.
Okay.
Well, we
And,
found
and
somebody
under-
It's not
anyway,
more
just
than
in
two
And
case.
under two, and under 2 stories.
Uh-huh.
But he should not be using his Hawaii seal, his stamp in California, that's all.
Yeah.
But you're more than happy to work with your dad on
So
this
in
project.
California, he's a designer.
That's right, just like I
Yeah.
am in New Mexico
Yeah.
right
mhm,
now.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
And one of the things I'm noting, this is more of a question for Ann, is that typically we ask to see the street facade, including the 2 neighboring
Oh, yeah.
properties, and I
Mhm.
didn't
Yeah.
see that here.
No,
It's,
that's right.
you know, in the interest of moving things along, and given that the addition is largely at the rear of the project, I don't think it's critical in this case, but
Yeah.
I wanted to not let that go without making mention of it.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant right now? All right.
What was the window company that, do you have a window company selected?
Yeah, let's see, Marvin or Pella, like my father sort of mentioned listed those 2 down specifically.
Okay. So I'm curious, and I don't know if Commissioner Arkin has come across this, but the Marvin integrity line doesn't have the 2-inch setback that Albany sometimes asks for. We just came across this in another city. And so I was just curious. So one of the requirements is that the glazing sits 2 inches back from the facade of the building in Albany. And that's
Okay.
so that the buildings don't look so flat, that they have kind of a dimensionality to the
Okay.
windows. And so I would just recommend that before you purchase the windows to confirm that, or
Okay.
I don't know if that section was included, you know.
Yeah, or you can detail them so the window is slightly recessed. and
Right.
Okay.
that's fine.
Okay.
Otherwise, I have no questions.
Okay, no questions? All right. Then I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there anyone, and that's fine, if we have other questions, we'll
thank
ask
you.
you back. Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to address the commission on 1074 Peralta at this point? All right. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. Who would like to start the discussion? Oh. And here comes our
Well-
street view.
Well, since I missed all the fun last time, last item, I'll jump in here. First to address the parking. We have, as a way of, meeting our 2 off-street parking space code, often accepted an area in the yard that is sized to fit an automobile, that is accessible from the street, but not required the homeowner to develop that space. And in this case, because they have a street in front and a street behind the house, there's adequate room to provide that second parking space. Should this homeowner, when his kids are teenagers, or a future homeowner, decide that having a second off-street parking space is advantageous to them. So in that way, I think we can accept the application as it is without having a parking exception. I'd like to discuss that with everyone else. In terms of the design review, I think it's a handsome project. The combination of materials is in keeping with the craftsman style of the existing house. It sort of, takes it in a slightly, perhaps Hawaiian direction. I don't know. But the structural, the exposed structure of the ceiling, heading out to the eaves, is a very nice detail. So I think this will be handsome. There's only one part of the project that I would like to see adjusted, and that's on the front-facing facade. This house being located where it is near a corner and on a downhill slope on Peralta, that even though it's set back from the street, that new upper gable end is going to be quite visible, and the narrow horizontal window over the vanity off-center from the gable just strikes me as being unharmonious. And I think if that could be replaced with a vertical window next to the vanity that is centered on the gable above it, or some other resolution of that facade, then this one's a go for me.
I agree with that. That was my initial reaction too. I like Commissioner Arkin's suggestion of making it a vertical window. You could even pair it with a window over the commode, kind of do more of a ganged effect of additional windows. And I think in a way, its relationship with the vent is somewhat shifted. So it either feels a little bit out of balance or a little bit of like a cyclops window. And I think that a second window or changing the shape of it might make it feel more in balance. That was the only comment I had as well. I like that, sorry.
If I may, you'll
Sure.
also find that the views of the hills in that direction are quite pleasing. So having a little more connection might be a nice.
That's a good point. Yeah, I like that it kind of builds and moves outward. When you look at the elevations, it does have a little bit of an Asian or Hawaiian feel to it in a craftsman language, so I like that here.
I have really nothing to add except to echo the comments of my fellow commissioners. Although there was one detail on the lighting plan. No, I'm joking. Once again, these are quite detailed drawings as for the last project, which is very nice to see. No, I think that it's a nice project, and I just concur with what my fellow commissioners have said.
Yeah, I think it's I think it's a nice design, and it is be a very nice addition. I too had some aesthetic kind of questions about that front facade there and the addition, and I didn't quite know what to recommend about it, but I think that I think that David and Stacy have made good recommendations, and I would like to go along with those. I think it's a nice design. And it's a very attractive building, and it'll be a very good project. All right.
And any
further discussion?
thoughts on the parking?
Oh,
The parking. You'll have to explain to me, David, what, so you're thinking of making some modifications in the front then?
No. This would be to acknowledge that in this case, there's enough backyard area that they could park a second car off of that rear street that they have, without requiring them to develop that space, that parking space at this time. And that's something that we've approved on other applications. Folks want to have their yard
So no
for a
development
garden.
requirements would be
Right,
required
but-
paving it or
To be clear, what they're maintaining here is access to that area so it can be
Right.
developed. And what we've often said no to is when someone is adding onto their house in such a way that they're,
close that.
yeah, they're creating a situation where that could never then be created. Just to be clear about the distinction.
so I think in this case, we would need that identified, or we would want to kind of describe it now so that as it comes back for plan check, that space is continuing to be held. Is that what you asked for in the past? We identify where that area is so that
Well, I think-
future projects don't, as it comes back, that it's
Yeah, I
shown or
think
something.
the problem is, there's not even enough space to do a side-by-side. The code allows, like a 16 by 18 pad, for example, and there isn't enough width back there to have that be code compliant.
It looks like 35 feet. On the
It's
drawing.
35 feet across the property. I guess when I took the measurement, I was going based on the gates and the existing parking pad.
Right, but there's enough width in the backyard. They would have to
Overall, there's enough width.
Overall in the
Yeah.
backyard,
excavate out that retaining wall or have a second space higher up in the opposite corner, both of which are possible. And that's all we're saying is
Okay.
maintain that possibility, if my fellow commissioners agree with that. I mean,
So an amendment to the plans that would show a potential future parking, like drawn in here.
Correct.
Would be acceptable.
Yeah.
And
and
at least it'd be formalized and it'd be in the plans,
Right,
rather than a parking exception.
correct.
I think that's a good suggestion.
I wouldn't necessarily need to have them bring it back before us to show that, but I
No.
would be willing to let them work with staff to make that change and deliver the drawings.
We can make that a requirement of the building permit submittal.
Yeah. So maybe we should ask the applicant or the homeowner if they understand that and if you agree with where we're going on this. So, in other words, what we're saying is you're going to have to reserve space in your backyard for a possible future parking space, rather than getting an exception. So you'll still have the requirement on the books for your property of providing 2 off-street parking spaces. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to, I mean, we love our yard too, we don't want to touch our yard like at all in fact, so. it's
Yeah.
Not in the plans.
Yeah, well, what we're saying is that someday,
Yes.
if the need arises, you may have to put a parking space back there.
Sure.
You have access to it, yeah.
When we
Okay.
take away all the street parking in Albany. Sorry, this is a continuation of the
Yeah.
conversation we
Yeah.
had
Right.
at our joint meeting the other night.
Yes. All right. All right.
Okay. I am moving approval of planning application 14-010 for design review, and design review only, no parking exception, at 1074 Peralta Avenue, incorporating all of the conditions outlined in the staff report, with additional conditions that the applicants show an area designated in the rear yard for a second parking space, which need not be developed at this time, and that the front facade be made more symmetrical or harmonious to the satisfaction of administrative staff. Administrative review by staff.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Very nice. Good motion. Staff, you have that? You
Yes,
You got
yes, I
that
do.
down? Mhm. Yeah, that's
Show
good.
the rear yard.
No,
park-
that's fine.
Oh, okay.
As long- Just confirm that you
Yeah.
have that, okay. Okay, all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No one is opposed, all right. So your project's been approved. Congratulations. Good luck with building it. And there is a 14-day appeal period, but after that time, if no one appeals, then our action is final. Okay? Great. Thank you. Good luck going forward with the project. Okay, the next item on our agenda tonight is 914 Tulare. And staff, Ann, we have a staff report first.
Yes, we do. The applicant for 914 Tulare is seeking design review approval for a new 678 square foot second-story addition and a detached 240 square foot accessory structure. The subject lot is 5,175 square feet, and there is an existing 1,500 square foot home with 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. The home was built in 1918. The proposed addition will include 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a study. The existing first floor will be reconfigured to accommodate stairs and a modified bedroom. There was an addition that was built on this house at some point in its history that is going to be demoed as part of this. It doesn't quite flow with the rest of the house, so the applicant is going to use that space more efficiently. This will include a lower-level family room that will be a part of the main home. Altogether, this will result in a 2,169 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath home. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing garage and construct the accessory building, which will be used as a home office. The structure will be located in the rear yard and will contain a studio office space and a half bathroom, as well as a separately accessible storage area. They do have sufficient room to provide 2 off-street parking spaces in the adjacent driveway.
Okay.
Bringing up the plans here. The existing home is craftsman in appearance, and is proposed to remain. The addition will be set back 29 feet from the building face. We'll have a front gable detail to mirror the existing roof line details of the front elevation. A new attic vent is proposed under the gable to match existing details. This vent is also mirrored on the south and west elevations under the gable. And the roof over the second-story addition will be cross gable with rafter tails to match the existing home. And at the rear of the home, a balcony is proposed that will be accessed from the master bedroom. So on the screen, this is the new front elevation. You can see these are the rafter tails that are proposed to carry over, as well as the attic vent. And this is the rear addition, rear view of the addition with the balcony and the details carrying forward. With that, we recommend approval of the project, and the applicant is here this evening with the project designer to answer questions.
Okay, that's good. And I have a comment or question, and you have, in the photos you have, in the staff report, you have a photo of the story poles, and the ones in the rear. And when I was over there, and I did talk with the applicant, and they told me that those story poles are inaccurate, and that, as best I could tell, the lines that go out to the side of the house, I didn't see that on the plans. It looked like the walls were going to generally follow the plane of the existing walls and weren't going to be cantilevered out. And he confirmed that that was the case.
They may have staked the corners of the eaves of the roof. That's something that often gets done.
Maybe that's right. It didn't look right to me. Following
Yeah, it
that.
looks
You
like
think
they did
that's
exactly
the
what.
corner of the eaves? Right. I thought it even went out farther than that. Anyway, if you look closely at the plans, you can see that the walls, you can see that the walls, rear addition does not cantilever, follows the existing walls. Okay, anyway, with that, the applicant is here, and would you like to make some comments? So, present your project.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate your time, guys. I actually was standing up here not so much to make really any appeal or to make an explanation, although I'm happy to do that. Just thought I should address, because I occasionally I work from home, but when the story poles were erected, I was not actually at home. So while I think the contractor is a fantastic, honest guy, I admit that I came back and I'm like, not quite sure why those are extending 6 inches out beyond the eaves, and he did so much work to make it happen. And I was like, he could have just followed the line that he did everywhere else and kept it within the footprint. So I guess the only thing I really want to clarify, if the story poles confuse the issue, and I think they might, is that the plan with this is to stay within the existing footprint of the house. I mean, those of us who live in Albany know it's not like the lot sizes are humongous. So I have really no desire to lose more backyard than I already don't have, if you follow me. So that's really all I wanted to do. And there's also, if you look closely, the house is old and it doesn't, it barely conforms to the setback requirement that's there. So I certainly don't want to encroach on that. I don't want to overshadow my neighbor to the north any more than I currently might. So that's all. I'm happy to answer any other questions. And Letitia, who really is the mastermind of this, is also here and can address things as well.
Great. Any other questions of the applicant at this point? No? Seeing none? Okay, good. All right, thank you. And let's open the public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience this evening who'd like to address the commission on 914 Tulare? I see no one coming forward, so I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for discussion. Who'd like to start?
I can start, absolutely. It's a well thought out design. The exterior elevations are very balanced. I am enjoying the play of gables. The only comment that I had was on the front elevation. I guess I'm not sure how, if there's a flatness to the upper gable with the one ridge. There's no windows, but it would be difficult to fit them in there due to the height of where the roof hits. So I'm just curious if my fellow commissioners see that as well, or if there's a concern there, but otherwise I'm ready to approve this.
Sorry, which window?
Well, I'm looking at this elevation here, I'm pointing to and if there's a materiality question or shifting the ridge vent down, making it larger, giving a little bit of detail to that one facade. It's fairly far back from, but it's the same question we had with the last applicant, that, you know, even though it is set back, it's part of the front facade, and but it's, in my opinion, it's not a deal breaker. So, just a suggestion.
Just a question for Ann. I think you mentioned, spoke about rafter tails. I didn't quite follow. Were you saying that the rafter tails of the addition that are present from the street elevation are echoing the rafter tails that are currently in the front of the house?
Yeah, they're existing on the single-story elevation, and then they're proposed to carry on the second-story elevation. Sorry that we don't have that up, but I can.
No, I
Wait,
think, yeah, no, I think I see what
Yeah.
you're saying. Yeah, I missed that, so I just wanted to make sure I knew what you were saying. In the plans, there's actually a line drawn underneath the bottoms of those tails. Is that,
Is the eave, so if you're looking at, that's where the wall comes in, so there's an eave there that would probably have ventilation in those,
oh,
you know.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's what that is, okay. And that doesn't exist in the existing part of the house in the front?
All right. Well, when I first looked at the plans, I was a little taken by the large amount of roof, the gables turning and having them horizontal across the front. I looked at the floor plan, and I liked the way the floor plan worked for sure. And when I did my site visit and looked around, I decided I wasn't going to be bothered by that roof, that an extended gable that is running parallel to the street. It's interesting, and it is different. It's different from other homes around, but I think I kind of like the variety, and I think it'll work. The addition will be set back quite a ways, and really quite a ways. I decided I didn't have a problem with it, even though my initial reaction was that looks kind of funny. So, I'll also comment that when I did my site work, I was invited into the home, and those front rooms in craftsman style are wonderful. They are in wonderful condition. I was jealous. Yeah.
Yeah, and to their credit, they're preserving those.
Yep,
you
that's
know,
correct.
Which is,
Yeah.
worth noting. Yeah, I think I first want to note that the project is at a 0.45 floor area ratio. And it is underneath the maximum height on a site that's sloping away from the street.
Right.
And I think a lot of what they've done with the roof forms on the back addition was to stay beneath that height limit, and they've done that.
That's right.
And that's, I think, commendable. I think it's a simple, straightforward solution, and I mean that as a compliment. It's handsome. It's minimal from the street. I know what you're saying about that vent, that it's, because of where the ceiling and the attic is, it feels like it's pushed up into that gable. And if there were a way to use trim, or, possibly even a little bit of a window, one could make that feel a little bigger. We'd be open to that, but as Stacy said, I don't think we need to mandate that. And similarly, on the north wall of the stairwell, the floor line of where the steps are climbing up is lower than that upper level. I get that when you're standing on the landing upstairs, it's nice to get a view out that window, but the window itself could come down a little lower, you know, maybe be a little longer, and that could help fill in what's otherwise a large area of stucco on that north facade. At the same time, you know, it's back from the street, it's up against the neighboring property,
Right.
it's not a prominent facade.
Right.
So I'll also just make a mention of that more as a, if you want, and, you know, if that change came in with the building permit, I don't think the planning department would have a problem with that. Am I right? If we said so? Okay. So we've said so. Parking, I think the widths work out, that you can still access that space that's between the parking, the property line and the house, having them both in the side yard. There's not a dimension on it, but it appears that the end of the front car is still 15 feet from the front property line, so it's not in the front setback, deserving of special mention, so I'm good with that.
Okay. Any further comments or thoughts?
No, I'd just say that I had your initial, Doug, I had your initial impression too, that there was something a little, to the layman, I'm one of the only non-architects here, I'm the only non-architect, and the look of it was a little bit funny to me, but it's also interesting. So if the design review passes muster with my fellow commissioners, then I'm all for it.
I think it works.
But I wanted to also add the in-law unit, or not the in-law unit, the studio.
The studio.
Not an in-law unit, but an accessory structure is handsome and as well, and in character with the rest of the project, so.
It's good. David, that's great. No further discussion, then we can take a motion. So.
We're not asking for any adjustments, correct?
I don't think so.
Okay.
It's just design review.
We kind of made a couple of suggestions, and if you heard them, they would be accepted, but I don't think we don't necessarily require them.
Okay. Then I move to approve planning application 14-019, design review for second-story addition and accessory structure at 914 Tulare.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Nick seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
No one is opposed? All right. So congratulations, and your application has been approved. There's a 14-day appeal period. It can be appealed to the city council. But if no one appeals, then after that, our decision is final, and you can talk with staff about moving on to the next steps. Great. Good.
I do
Thank
want to
you.
say the hand drawings really bring to life the character of the elevations.
Yeah,
No, that's a dying art.
great.
Thanks very much.
Good, thank you. Good. So the next item on our agenda is 957 Stannage.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a staff report then?
Yes. The applicant is seeking design review, conditional use permit, and approval of a secondary dwelling unit for an addition at 957 Stannage. The subject lot is 4,800 square feet and contains a 1,500 square foot home. The applicant is proposing to lift the home to create legal ceiling height in the lower level, where they will construct the second unit, as well as additional living space for the main residence. For the main residence, the lower level will include a new kitchen and living room, dining room area. The upper level will include 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, home office, and another family living room. The overall building height is proposed to increase to 23 feet 7 3/4 inches. The home is craftsman in appearance and is proposed to remain. There are 3 off-street parking spaces which are proposed. There's a detached 2-car garage. There will be 2 spaces in tandem to serve the main residence and 1 space within the garage to serve the second unit. Currently, the lower level contains 2 separately accessible efficiency units, of which there is no permit history. There's some assorted code enforcement history that goes with that. So we're glad to see that the applicant in their application is willing to correct a lot of this unpermitted work. As I mentioned, the home is craftsman in appearance and is proposed to remain. Architectural elements that are proposed include retaining the bay window on the 2nd-story south elevation, 2-level bay on the front elevation, which will serve as the kitchen in the 2nd unit and the office for the main residence. Rafter tails will be preserved on the north and south elevations. There are bracket details under the gable for the bay window. The front porch is being modified from its current configuration where it's essentially centered on the front elevation. It's going to be moved over closer to the driveway, and the applicant has proposed a new trellis with some landscaping to enhance that front entrance. Contrasting building materials, including hardy plank on the lower level exterior and stucco on the 2nd story, are proposed. And the gable roof lines are proposed to be replicated and varied with the addition. The 2nd unit is proposed to be 406 square feet. It's attached and will be in the lower level. There will be a separate entrance located on the north side of the home, providing access, though there will not be any internal access from the main residence to the 2nd unit. And I believe this results in a 4-bedroom, 4-bath home when you factor in the 2nd unit as part of the floor plan. And with that, the applicant is here this evening. I'm going to see if we can resolve some of our technical issues to bring the floor plan up so you can take a look at that.
Okay.
We are recommending approval of the project.
Okay, good. Any questions of Ann? No?
Not for Ann.
Okay. And is the applicant here? Okay, good. Would you like to address the commission, talk about your project a little bit?
I work for the design build company, so
Okay.
I'm not the client. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I don't have anything to say.
Okay.
My name is Matthew.
Okay.
Were you the designer of the project?
So I came in on the design in medias res, in the middle of things. So yeah, I wasn't there for kind of like the schematic design process.
Okay. I do have a few questions.
Sure.
Do you know why it's being, why the choice is being made to lift it up? It appears that it's, you know, in a, there's space below the house now, probably has a lower ceiling, but they're bringing the floor level up closer to grade. Is there any particular reason?
So the existing, you know, basement floor it's below grade.
Right.
So, and it's, yeah, the ceiling height isn't, it's non-compliant. So, it's a very wet site. That's another issue. So getting it up out of the ground is one of the main reasons. And then the low ceiling height, just, it wouldn't comply.
And looks like they're aiming at having a 10-foot ceiling height.
That's right.
In the lower level. Okay.
Yes.
Very tall owners, or?
They are tall. Yeah, yeah, they want that 10-foot ceiling.
Those are my only questions.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant right now? I guess I will comment. I was curious. It looks like there's 3 gas meters on that building right now. I thought, yeah, like 3 dwelling units in there?
Yeah, something happened at some point in time. So there were the 2 efficiency units and then the main residence. We don't have any permit history on file for any of those units being legalized. In fact, we actually had a note in the file about, you know, an unusually high amount of power usage, and PG&E conducted an investigation back in the 70s.
Oh.
So I think there was some jerry-rigging that went on there with that property.
Yeah. Okay.
And I know in doing preliminary review, I noted to the applicant that that would obviously have to be
Yeah.
modified with 2 units.
Okay. All right, let's see. So the next thing is to open the public hearing. Anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? I see no one coming forward, so I will close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission. So, looks like the applicants tonight have been meeting with their neighbors. All right, okay, where do we want to start on this one? Who would like to begin? Any
I'd like to raise the question on the porch and start the
Okay.
conversation there because we had a conversation not so long ago about a porch that maybe only had 2 sides and that not meeting our requirement, and this one does as well. And then I look back at the original porch elevation and see that it's open on 3 sides. And so I thought, well, let's decide if the approach is the one we
So the
want.
porch, you're talking about the entry.
You're referring to
counting
whether or not it
to-
counts as part of the floor area ratio.
So that was the question that I had was,
Okay.
was the porch counted as in part of the floor area ratio?
And I'm not sure that it won't still comply
Hmm.
if it does count, and it should, yes?
I'm sorry, the porch, you're suggesting that the porch should count in the FAR?
Yes.
Okay.
Should.
It's
It-
enclosed on 3 sides, in this case, 2 walls and a roof.
See, 2 walls and a roof, okay.
But I
Okay.
don't, I think the project still complies, even if
Yeah.
that does count as a
I
porch.
think it's right at the maximum on
It'll
the
go
Yeah.
right there, but yeah.
sheet A2. The applicant actually called out the particulars of the porch area as part of the FAR calculations. Existing at 64 square feet, under proposed at 75 square feet.
Okay.
And it is included,
It is
It is
included.
included,
Okay.
okay. Mhm. All right.
rightfully so.
So we still have a pretty high FAR. We're into the area where we're looking for exceptional design, design review guidelines, so.
Well, I guess a couple other things that, in looking at this, that I feel we should talk about are, and maybe I'm not quite understanding, but the door to the front porch seems much higher than the windows adjacent to it that are in the other room. So I'm wondering if the floor is staying lower in one area, or if the window and the door relationship is different.
Well, the window and the door on the front, or I'm sorry,
So
the
in the
two,
lower
the
level-
2 windows on the lower level on the front serve the
The
in-law
second
They
unit.
unit.
serve the in-law
But,
unit.
but it is a
yeah.
curious device, and I don't think it's a negative, but they are coming up a few steps to get to the porch where the entry door is, and then stepping inside to a landing, and then from there, going
Up.
forward and down a few steps to get to the main living level of the larger, the main part of the house, the main house, or from that same landing, turning and going up a set of stairs to the bedroom level.
So the 10 feet, sorry, for some reason I'm having a hard time understanding this. So the 10 feet is from the studio space, and then we're
If you go
we're
to
biting
the,
into it a little bit with the main
Oh,
floor
yeah, I
plan?
see.
well, if you go to the section, you'll see that
Right.
both the in-law unit and the main, lower level of the main house have those 10-foot ceilings.
Right,
And then the porch and the landing are up, and that floor of the main level, the lower level, is just a few inches, 6 inches, what's required for clearance above grade. But the porch is up a little bit. I actually think it feels more porch-like,
Yeah.
so I have no trouble with that.
Uh-huh.
I just wish there were more of it. If the porch extended across the front of the house.
Yeah,
A little,
right.
or just came out towards the street a little further.
Yeah,
It would be that much better for it. Similarly, we may, you may want to consider having the door of the in-law unit at least face the street, and maybe it has a little porchlet awning roof or something, plus a little patio.
You could mirror that porch
How would
around
that
the
look? That's an
gable-
interesting
the
idea.
bay.
That would be very feasible, wouldn't it?
Seems so.
Looking at the floor plan.
And, you know, I guess I'd like to hear if there's a particular reason why that front door of the second unit faces the side yard rather than the street. You know, this particular stretch of Stannage Avenue has a number of units with second units, or there's one that I know is a duplex,
Yeah,
honest to goodness
it does.
duplex. So it's, and you know, and you can see in the street facade elevations, it's not out of scale. So
Yeah.
while, you know, I made the comment about the 10-foot ceilings on the lower level, it's still more than 4 feet underneath the maximum height. And the proportions of it still hold together. So you know, in this case, I'll let a tall ceiling go. The change in materials is nice. I think, you know, maintaining the gables and the brackets of the existing house is, those are all smart moves. And again, it's just that the entry and the porch feel out of scale with the larger development that's taking place. And finally, you know, I have to make note, and a lot of this has to do with the existing house that's being lifted, but we've got just about every possible window type imaginable going on this building. Luckily, the front facade has been cleaned up and holds together, but when you look at those other elevations, and again, I think on a tight urban lot, you don't see them all at the same time. And some of these are existing windows that appeared that they won't be changed out, but I guess these are on the side elevations more than the front. If they are getting changed out, trying to make them more consistent would be something we'd like to see. But otherwise, I think the parking strategy holds. They're adding a third space, or actually, you know, the required third space for having a pre-1958 existing development plus adding a unit. I question whether we need to have 2 spaces in that, or 3 spaces in that instance, and in this case in particular, where they have 2 units at least on the site already. 2 units would qualify. Or 2 parking spaces would qualify.
Would qualify,
It's because they're adding additional square footage in excess of 240 square feet to the main residence. That's what triggers the requirement for the third parking space.
Oh, I see.
Well, again, it works.
Yeah. I admit to being intrigued by David's suggestion of moving the door for the studio apartment to the front. I'm having a little trouble in visualizing exactly how it would work. I think it's probably a good suggestion. That it probably could work and look fine. It wouldn't be at the same level as the other door, obviously. It would be it'd be at close to ground level, I would think. I'm interested in that. Any other thoughts from commissioners, comments about the design?
I agree with Commissioner Arkin's assessment about the window language being so varied, and maybe one way to approach it is there's a lot of new windows also being introduced, and I'm looking at sheet A8.
A8?
The north elevation. And so in this case, we have a couple awning windows around a picture. To the left, we have kind of 3 windows that are grouped, and then we have a slider, and then we have a swinging casement with 2 double hungs. And maybe one suggestion would be to kind of create more consistency between the windows that are being introduced as well. Or taking clues from, let's see, the front elevation has the pair of double hungs around. So similar to the window on the right that's near the door. And so maybe that's a language that's repeated on the left.
So that this gets repeated here?
You know, as an
Yeah.
option, I guess so we have kind of an A, a B, a C, a D, like everything is different, and maybe it would feel more kind of cohesive if there was consistency, and so that's one thought, is that
Yep.
you could repeat that. You could repeat the proportion of the middle window. It's just food for thought. And then as we track that around to, see the rear elevation on sheet A9, I'm really enjoying the very tall doors in the back, and one thought would be, so either all of those windows want to be ganged together with a big piece of trim, which may be missing in this drawing, but there's a lot of little squares, and it may be beautiful because you have that smaller double-hung window that seems kind of the same proportion on the second floor, but it also could be a lot of elements that feel very different, so that's something I would be careful about as you're detailing it. The way it's drawn right now, the trim is carrying between the siding is carrying between each of the windows, and I think that's probably not a detail that you want to do. Okay.
Yeah, it will be, you know, walled together. Can I make a comment about the windows?
You may, of course. Mhm.
The reason that you're seeing the sliders, those are existing sliders. So it's a budgetary concern, you know, we have drawings that
Yeah.
show, you know, introducing windows, you know, like say changing this opening and something more unified, but it's really comes down to budget.
Are the doors on the right, are those 7.0 doors or 6.8? They look like they're 7.0, or how tall are the doors on the lower level there?
These ones here
Yeah,
are 7.0.
they're 7.0. And then the double-hung windows look like they're being hung maybe at 6.8 or even lower, and then to fit the clerestory in. Is there room in that 7-foot height to take that clerestory, to start it at the 7.0? Is there clearance before you hit the ceiling?
You're saying so that this moves up in here and aligns with that?
Right,
You know, this is the back of the house.
I know.
And
It's still, you know, I just want to point this out because to my eye, there's an alignment issue that could be pretty easily rectified. I'm not going to not approve it because of this, but I feel like I should bring it to your attention.
Yeah, no, I hear you. This window, this set of windows here is high up like that because of the countertop of the kitchen. So I can see also if that didn't have to be so high, you know, we can start to align that, bring that down.
Well, that's a 7.0 door and you have a 10-foot ceiling. You have 3 feet above that door to shift the clerestory up into. If that's an 8-foot door, which it may be, they just look very tall. Okay.
Yeah, maybe it is taller than a 7.0 door. So, do a little work on the elevations maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really think the front elevation in particular, that if you could show the porch a little more love,
Yeah.
that would be good, to use a technical term. No, it just, you know, right, I think trellis detailing could be fine, but right now it's just a little spindly and hardly barely there. I think if the porch floor itself could come out closer to the sidewalk, you've got up to 9-foot setback, and the front of the bay on the building is at a 15-foot setback, so you've got 6 more feet that you can come closer to the sidewalk, and I think that would help both to identify that as the front door of the building, and with a little more porch, it's going to balance with the much bigger house than was there previously. In terms of the door to the in-law unit, I can be okay with it on the side like that, but I think if you could create a little patio, maybe with a short wall around it, so that that tenant in that little unit has a little seating area out at the front of the house, doesn't even have to have a roof over it, but just a front porch, which is really a transition zone from the sidewalk, to the interior of your house, that could be a nice way. It's more of a landscaping solution for approaching that.
Well, I suspect it's because they don't want it to look like a duplex, but what about moving the door to the second unit to the front and repeating the porch? And what do my fellow commissioners think of that?
I thought that was a great idea.
It could be. It would be that, the roof would be significantly higher than the floor there because you wouldn't want
They
to
could
repeat that coming up and down again. Or they could be at two different levels, but that would take some pretty serious study and careful design to pull that off.
Did we figure out whether there was a reason why the porch came up as high and then stepped down into the main?
I think it's to make it part of the stairway climbing to the second floor.
Yeah, in a nutshell, it kills a couple birds with one stone. It's because it's a 10-foot high ceiling.
Yeah.
In order to fit that, if you go to the floor plan
That landing is kind of a landing for the stairs to go up, for going upstairs, yeah.
yeah,
So you walk in the door and
Yeah.
you can go down 3
so
steps.
This run here, if this wasn't up, up high like this,
I see.
it would just be a super long stair.
Yeah.
I see.
Projecting out into the next space above. So by splitting it, we're able to have a shorter run here. And it's kind of interesting too.
And in many ways, most of the other houses on this street are going to have a crawl space below that first floor. So the typical pattern is you come up a few steps off the sidewalk and enter the main level of the house.
And it gives it more of a proper
Yeah.
porch too.
So that's why I'm kind of coming around to, well, maybe it is best to leave that entry to the in-law unit around the corner, and that doesn't sort of, hint at what's really going on.
I agree that it does want to have some kind of awning, or that could be, kind of add more three-dimensionality to when you're looking at the front elevation, you see a little bit of a slope.
Sorry, just laughing about the previous comment. Go ahead.
I like the idea of bringing the door around to the front. I wouldn't be opposed to that. I'd be willing to allow for that in our approval, if it was decided to leave the door on the side. In looking at the front porch, I think what I missed saying before was that there's a bench drawn in now, but it could be an opportunity to really add some detail with a railing, and if it's over 30 inches, you're probably going to require to do it anyways for code.
It's not over 30 inches.
It's not.
Right now. And, I take your point. I think they want they want something fairly clean there.
If you were to bring the door around to the front, and the porches they would be at different levels, and one could have a rail, and one could have kind of a relationship with the garden. And so I think the doors being at different heights actually maybe make more sense to me than seeing the existing windows and the door at a different height. So if that's something you were interested in exploring, I would be in support of that.
Both of those options, and take a look at them, yeah.
I like that it activates the front yard. Otherwise, that corner becomes a little bit of a dead zone, or you're going to end up planting a Japanese maple there, or something needs to activate that.
Yeah, it's kind of unbalanced right now, the front facade. It's a little kind of lopsided, so that would balance it better.
Let me ask, are the commissioners considering continuing this item or approving it with
Good question.
suggestions? Or with
Question.
conditions? Further conditions?
Yes, that's what we're considering. One or the other.
Right.
Struggling.
I might be in favor of continuing to allow the applicant time to consider all these options more carefully. These are my thoughts.
Yeah, I'm of a similar mind. I think that a little more work on the front facade in particular is warranted, but what you can take away from this is that It sounds like we're all in support of the strategy
Yep.
of lifting it, having the taller floor, the slightly raised porch, just making that bigger and more developed. There's work that can be done regularizing the windows. We'd like to see that. And then maybe a proposal on how the in-law unit entry can be.
I'll mention it again.
I'm at a loss of words.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Doug, sorry.
Yeah. I'll say again, one of the things you would be getting with this project is a very high FAR, close up to our very limit. And our design guidelines call for an excellence of design when you're above 0.45. And when I looked at this project, and I could see that it looked like you were economizing in a way, that you were considering your budget, and you mentioned it even when you were here today in your presentation, that, of course, everybody has budgetary concerns when they're doing any big project, but so I don't know how to make the call on that, but I do think that excellent design may cost more sometimes, and that, I think that's what we're talking about. To me, anyway, a more unified window scheme would be preferable to saying, well, that window's okay, let's keep it when we raise the building. It'd be better to say, let's get new, higher quality windows in here. Let's design the building as a whole, right? I think that makes for better design. The porch is simple. It could be detailed in other ways. There are many other considerations here that we've made that may be, that you and your client may see as costly, that we see as adding to the design excellence. And I'm inclined to, I think you're getting a lot by being able to go up to 0.55 or 0.54, 0.53, really right in there. That's a benefit the city is giving you. And I think it's a big deal for us to do that, and that we have a right to expect some quality back, even if it costs more.
Well, I think yes, you do. What we have done is, especially on the street, the wall facing the street, if you go to can you go to the second floor, Ann? So, yeah, I mean, definitely these windows, so these dash lines are showing where the old windows, the existing windows are. So we're centering these ones here.
Right.
Definitely trying to, a lot of them are remaining right now due to the budgetary concerns.
Yeah, no.
But trying to address the front window, at least in the windows, is what we're trying to do. And, but yeah, I take your point about the street and especially.
And I agree that there's nice symmetry in the front.
Well, but it can be improved, so, yeah. No problem.
Yeah, there's another house on this street, a duplex, that's on the opposite side and a little closer towards Solano Avenue, that has two entries facing the street, and they do it pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah, that doesn't bother me. Yeah, Nick mentioned that, and I thought, well, that is a real good point. It does look like a duplex, but I'm not sure that I haven't decided whether that's good or bad. I think we do need to consider that. But it looks to me like that might be okay in this context to have
and at the
to
same
have that
time,
duplex look.
That corner where the rental unit is, it faces the neighbor's driveway, so it's not like it's right
So
up
it's not
against the
facing
neighboring building.
it's not facing your neighbor's
And that's-
window.
And that's why I
Right.
say it may be okay.
It may
if
be
that
okay.
door remains on the side. There's a big tree there also.
Yeah, whether you go with that studio entrance in the front or on the side, if you go with it on the side, I think David's idea of creating a little space, a little entrance kind of area, a little patio for that tenant is a very good one.
Okay.
Do that with landscaping and related improvements. brickwork and that sort of thing. Whichever way you decide. All right, it sounds like we get a motion for continuing.
Yeah, motion to continue. I guess the only question is, should we do it to a date certain of our next meeting, which would require the applicant to turn something back into you by when?
By the end of next week.
End of next week.
Is that feasible? That's fine, yeah. Okay, great.
Okay, so we'll continue planning application 14-014 to a date certain
May 14th.
of, thank you, May 14th.
And I will miss that meeting, but Phil may be here, so you'll have a different commission.
If
All right.
that was a
Oh, yes,
motion?
that's right, it's been a motion.
Then
Motion's
I'll
been
second.
made. I will, it's been seconded by Nick, so, all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, all right. So you have a continuance, and we'll see you again. Okay, great. All right. Just like that, Barry is here. And the next item is general plan.
We're going to be playing musical chairs. You'll have to do the presentation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, all set?
Think so. Yeah.
Oh, you're going to go to, okay.
All right, so I guess I should announce it here. The next item on the agenda then is new business, goals, policies, and actions for land use and revised general plan policies. And our consultant, Barry, is here to make a presentation, and we'll start with that. Okay?
Great. Good evening, Commission. Tonight, we're going to walk you through the new land use goals, policies, and actions. And I wanted to start off with just a quick slide that compares the current general plan organization to the new land use element organization. And we're just talking about the land use element now. At the last meeting, we went through the existing general plan land use element, and we talked about the goals and policies, and we talked about the growth assumptions as well, but we walked you through a policy audit which looked at the existing plan and some possible ways of reorganizing that material to make it a little bit more intuitive and relevant. So whereas the current land use element has this list of 9 topics that you see on the left side of the screen, the proposed organization is on the right side, and I've got a series of slides to walk through now which goes through each of these new land use goals. I do want to emphasize this is a first draft, so it will certainly change between now and the time it comes back to you in the future, both for further consideration and ultimately for your recommendation. But we did want to just get the ball rolling on starting the process of fleshing out new policies and actions. So the first goal is kind of a global goal. I've titled it Urban Village by the Bay, which is, of course, the city's motto. But the idea here is that the existing land use element really does not have an overarching goal about the future of the city. And what this says is really, what do we want Albany to be in 20 years? And I'll just read the goal. Maintain Albany's character as an urban village by the bay by sustaining the city's residential neighborhoods, supporting thriving, walkable business districts, conserving and improving access to the waterfront, and providing parks, open spaces, and public facilities which contribute to the city's outstanding quality of life. It sounds a little bit like a mission statement, It is kind of a mission statement for the land use element of the general plan, but it's a statement that's missing in the current 1992 plan. So I think it would be helpful to have something like that to kind of kick off the land use element. Under that goal, we have a series of fairly broad policies that look at topics like housing opportunities, providing a balance between job growth and housing growth in the city, maintaining San Pablo Avenue and Solano Avenue as the principal business districts, accommodating the transformation of what I'm calling here the West Albany Business District on Cleveland and East Shore over time to accommodate new uses. Open space goals, there's an open space policy. There's a broad policy about waterfront that focuses really on access to the waterfront and connecting the waterfront to the city. A policy on sustainability and transit-oriented development. Economic diversity, which is something that I think came out of our discussion at the last meeting, the value of income diversity in Albany, and coordination with nearby cities, and those cities are specifically listed. So again, when I'm through with this, we can come back and maybe walk through the specific comments that the commission may have on the policies, but this is the first goal and policies. The next goal is preserve and enhance the high quality of Albany's residential neighborhoods. There is a goal like this in the existing general plan. It talks about the city's neighborhoods. This is actually the first goal in the current plan. The policies, many of these policies are new. There's not a whole lot here that's been carried forward because the current plan is silent on a lot of these topics. But this speaks to the design of infill development and home additions and alterations, transitions in scale between tall buildings and smaller buildings in neighborhoods, code enforcement, building codes and so forth, the issue of second-story additions, home occupations, couple of statements regarding land use issues on Keynes and Adams, those are carried forward from the current plan. Non-residential uses within residential areas. This would be things like churches and daycare centers and so forth. Small lots, just recognizing that the city has a varied lot pattern which includes small non-conforming lots. Front yards and the value of front yards to the character of neighborhoods. Secondary units, and finally neighborhood beautification. And again, this is not a complete list. These are just the topics that are covered by the policies. The policies themselves are in the handout. The next goal is to maintain vibrant commercial districts that provide an attractive, walkable environment for shopping, dining, entertainment, and services. There's a broad policy on mixed use, policy on the future of the San Pablo corridor, the Solano corridor, the node around Solano and San Pablo, the general policy on commercial design, policies on buffering between the commercial corridors and the residential neighborhoods that they abut, a policy on office space and how office space can be integrated into commercial districts, the use of conditional use permits to address some of the impacts of different commercial uses, the future of automotive uses in the city, the issue of lot consolidation, which is a housing element issue really insofar as small lots can be consolidated into larger lots to make more viable building sites. Urban open space, which would be plazas, courtyards, and so forth, areas, pocket parks that enhance the business environment. Parking management, and I will say on parking, there will be much more on parking in the transportation element. There's cross-references to policies that are now being written. And then the Northern Gateway, which is the area up by the Albany Bowl, which is probably the largest housing opportunity or development opportunity site, I should say, in the city. So the policies on business districts really combine policies that are under about 4 or 5 different goals in the current plan, and I think create a little bit more of a complete picture of the city's commercial areas. The next goal, which is a new goal, is to recognize civic and institutional facilities as an essential element of Albany's identity and an important part of the quality of life in the city. And policies on civic facilities, which are things like schools, the library, police and fire, and so forth. Large institutional uses, this would include private schools, the Orientation Center for the Blind, the USDA, and other large institutional uses that are part of the fabric of the city. Healthcare facilities, when we talk about the mitigation of development impacts, that's a somewhat different issue. That's really making sure that new development pays its way and pays for the additional demand for the services that it needs. There are a set of policies on UC Village, the Gill Tract, financial support from the university for improvements to city services, and coordination of park planning between the city, the school district, and UC, and East Bay Regional. There's a goal on environmentally sensitive areas, which is new, and this says, ensure that land use and planning decisions protect the quality of Albany's natural environment and conserve environmentally sensitive areas. It's important to point out that this is only one goal that deals with this topic, but there's an entire element of the general plan, the conservation element, that will talk in much greater detail about the environment and environmental preservation and sustainability issues. So this is kind of a bridge between the land use element and that part of the general plan. There is a policy on Albany Hill, a policy on shoreline protection and restoration, a policy on creek protection, and a policy on the preservation of archaeological resources in the city, and that is new. The last goal is on community character. This is a carryover from the existing general plan, although the goal has been reworded. It is to retain and enhance the positive elements of Albany's visual character, including prevailing architectural styles, locally important landmarks, significant views, and natural features. And the policies address historic preservation, the importance of gateways into the city in terms of defining the city's image and identity, particularly on San Pablo and Buchanan. Views and vistas, these are both short-term views or short-range views and vistas and long views and vistas to features like the Golden Gate and so forth. Streetscape improvements, this includes tree planting and so forth. Signage and the aesthetics around signage, and the same with lighting. Activating public space, which is how do we create lively public spaces that add value to the city. Waterfront identity, again, how can the city be better connected to its waterfront? Commercial property upgrades, which would be how can we encourage business owners to invest in their properties and improve the appearance of their properties and assist them with that. And there is a new policy on wireless facilities that's been added. So one thing I'll point out again, which is these are policy statements. They're broad, they're general, they're not, most of them don't say things like, go out and rezone this piece of property to have this outcome or to this density. These are intended to guide long-range decisions over a 20-year period. So if they seem a little bit vague or general, they're supposed to be a little bit vague or they're not supposed to be so vague or general that you can't figure out what they're trying to say, but they're not intended to be extremely specific actions in the way the housing element actions were. That said, we do want to ask the commission if you have some ideas on specific steps that should be taken after the general plan is adopted, specific studies to be done or zoning changes to be made. We can look at including those as implementation actions for some of what's in here. So I've left you with 4 discussion questions here, which is, first of all, are these the right goals? Are you comfortable with the goals as they're framed? Second, are there missing land use topics that require policies? In other words, are there big issues that we've forgotten about in this section? Do the policies provide the right direction? I mean, is there anything that you read in here and you think, no, that's not a good policy, that's not the direction we want to go, or that's not worded properly? And last, are there additional action programs that are needed to implement policies, which is kind of the first point that I was making. With that, I will turn it back over to the commission, and we do want to make sure we have an opportunity for public comment on this item. Thanks.
Okay. So Barry, the staff report we have then tonight has all of this, and then listing as well the language in your draft policies under all of these topics for all of these headers that you've just gone through. Okay.
Right.
All right. Implement those goals. All right. So I wonder how we should proceed here. Should we open the public hearing? Commissioners, do we want at some point to go through the staff report page by page? Have people read it and made notes on it? open up to general comments. I'm not quite sure exactly how to proceed. Go through it topic by topic, I guess.
Well, we should probably have a conversation ahead of that.
Okay.
As to, are the 6 items, 6 general areas outlined appropriate relative to the 9 that we had previously? And
I
if
think
we're
that's a
in
good
agreement
suggestion.
that those are, then maybe taking
Yeah.
them on one at a time. And in each case, answering the discussion questions could probably get us through.
I think that's a good approach.
I just have a question about our staff report. Explain to me the relationship between the audit and the draft.
Sure. The intent of the audit was to evaluate each of the policies and actions in the existing plan and make some determination about what should be carried forward or edited. So there was actually not a whole lot that's carried forward, but there's some carried, maybe 30 or 40% of the existing plan is carried forward. There's a lot of new content here that was not in the previous plan. So and that was added based primarily on input from this commission, what I would call best practices in planning, some of the direction provided by the housing element, some of the other planning documents that the city has adopted, the climate action plan, for example, some of the transportation plans. So we've tried to integrate all of that.
I guess, I had a kind of a general question relating to that, I think. Maybe this would be an appropriate time for an overview of the other elements of the general plan. And I'll bring this out from my thoughts when I finished reading this were, how are we going to integrate other planning documents that the city has adopted over time? I was thinking the Climate Action Plan, Parks and Recreation Department has a good plan that's fairly new. There's the Arts, I think it's a plan.
Yes.
That the Arts Master Plan. There's an old planning document on Albany Hill that I think is being updated. So if you could talk a little bit about, or Jeff or whoever's appropriate, talk a little bit about the coordination of the general plan preparation and how those existing and adopted plans get incorporated, or whether we say they need to be revised and updated,
Right.
what our approach is.
Okay, so to your first point, this is the land use element. We will also have a transportation element, conservation and open space element, a safety and hazards element, a community services and facilities element, and at this point, we're still looking at having a waterfront element of the general plan. So there will be additional policies and actions in each of those. Some of the other plans that you mentioned and that we've looked at align more with those topics. So for example, the active transportation plan, most of those policies will be in the transportation element. The Creekside Master Plan, which is the Albany Hill Plan, deals primarily with vegetation management. Most of those policies will be in the conservation and the safety element of the plan.
Okay.
In the land use element, we did look at all of the other planning documents. There probably are about 15 of them, and they are also included in matrix form in an audit. We didn't provide that as part of the staff report, but that does exist. It's kind of a work in progress, and it continues to grow and evolve, particularly the column that says evaluation of the policy. But we are considering all of the documents that you mentioned, the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, that's part of that audit inventory. So all of those are integrated into this. The land use element, there are some climate oriented policies, I'll say, in this draft, on walkability, on transit-oriented development, and so forth.
That's helpful. That's helpful. Thank you. Okay. It's appropriate time to open a public hearing. I know we have one speaker, probably a speaker card. Do you have a speaker card?
More of an open conversation.
It's kind of open.
Yeah.
So, Bob, Mr. Otis,
I know
feel free to address us now or later.
I know
Oh,
We also received some communication, which would be nice to hear a summary of at some point.
oh, we did.
Yeah, but
I
after.
printed it out and left it in my printer, too. So,
Thank you, Commission members. Bob Outis, Albany resident. My comment is one that I should have made at the last meeting, but I wasn't able to be here for that. I'm basically repeating some comments that I've made before, but I think it's important to put on the record, since we're now officially in this new planning process, that I think the notion that there's an assumption that there will be no change in the waterfront and no change in the remainder of the UC Village are bad assumptions. Those, if one goes back and looks at Measure C as adopted, the initiative that was actually on the ballot, you'll see that it refers to the fact that the waterfront is the largest remaining area of land in the city that is, quote, suitable for development, close quote. And it recites specifically that all that was happening was adding an additional step of voter approval to the city's regular planning processes. Now that the council has abandoned the ruse that the waterfront committee was actually a planning body, the ball is back in your court. And to mix metaphors, it's not acceptable to punt on this one. To assume that there'll be no change in the waterfront over the next 20 years is an assumption that we have failed. We are going to fail for yet another 20 years. And that is, I don't know how to say it other than that while Barry can draft wonderful statements and we can all feel good about them, if this is the approach we take, we are converting a general planning process into a process of developing general platitudes, which will in fact be meaningless as they relate to the two most important pieces of property in the city for which some constructive development could occur. I'll be submitting written comments at some later time because I think there are actually some serious questions about whether you can have an adequate plan if you do proceed in this manner, and it may take me a month to find the time to do it, but I will be getting to that and I'll be presenting written comments. Thanks.
I don't see anyone else who will be addressing the commission on the item, so. And I think we hear you on that. I mean, that's a very important comment. Okay.
And Ann, would you mind just summarizing the other communication we received?
Also, early this morning, or late in the morning, I should say, I forwarded the commission an email that we received from Ken Friedman, who's the owner of the Albany Bowl, a familiar face to many of you. Unfortunately, he was unable to make it this evening, but asked that the correspondence be forwarded. And I can just kind of go through it. There are 6 points to his email, the first of which is that he has suggested that mixed-use designation should preserve all options for site uses. So, for example, he says, allow all ground floor commercial use only up to a 0.95 FAR with no residential required, or a 3.0 if residential is included, so extending FAR requirements. Mixed use to include some ground floor commercial or office or residential or combination thereof. Expanding nodes, so allowing a density of up to 4 stories, specifically for the Albany Bowl site, as well as the Solano-San Pablo intersection, which is designated as a node within our current general plan. Buffering height, setback, and daylight plane rules to be more flexible, to allow the P&Z to consider site-specific circumstances as applications are reviewed. And of course, he's identified the Albany Bowl here, where there are 3-story apartment buildings on Adams at the base of a hill. This should enable bowl site development with taller buildings, lesser daylight plane requirements, and no parking space setbacks. Everybody's favorite topic, parking. Everyone wants greater use of mass transit and less reliance on auto traffic. However, it must be recognized San Pablo Avenue will be an auto-intensive corridor. That said, providing parking is critical for attracting and retaining businesses that pay rents, assisting the city in tax base and job creation. And the last item in his email is increasing height and density and more flexible residential parking requirements to encourage mixed-use development in the transit.
You said there were 2 communications?
Oh, no,
One.
this was the only one.
That's one, just one, okay,
Yeah.
good. So Commission should be working with Barry's presentation. Should we go to the beginning of the staff report and kind of go through Appendix A on a page-by-page basis and see if,
Sure.
what happens, or if issues pop out, comments?
Let's start
come-
with this list, the
Yeah,
naming and
6 new
numbering.
goals.
Yeah, going from the
Okay.
9 previous to
Okay.
the 6 that we're currently looking at. And I'll say straight up, the one thing I appreciate here is that it's organized more by, a land use area.
Yes.
Than specific target neighborhoods.
yeah, I think that's good.
And I think that's appropriate.
Yeah.
I understand what he's proposing by having the first one be the overarching goals.
Mhm.
And I think that's a great way to introduce the land use topic. And then community character, as I understand it, is really getting into the finer grain of, how land use can be detailed specific to Albany. So I'm comfortable with these. That's really all I wanted to say about it,
Okay,
but
good.
make sure that we had a chance to, agree on that if we do.
Anyone else have a comment on that?
So I was curious where the industrial area got wrapped into, and I was thinking of the CMX zone in particular. Well, I guess that is the industrial area. Could we classify that as a business district? Would we classify that as it continues to evolve? So looking 20 years down the road, is it going to continue to infill as a mixed use? And where would that be covered under this?
Yeah, what term was it you were using?
Yeah, right now it's policy 1.4, which is a little bit misleading in the name because the name is production, distribution, and repair, which is the name of that
Yeah.
land use category that
Uh-huh.
is applied to those areas, but that's what that is. I did, when in drafting this, think about creating a separate goal just for that area because the business districts really is more Solano and San Pablo. It might be that needs to be popped up a little more, that the future of that area, because there are some opportunities in that area that we haven't really addressed.
I think that could be a potentially hot growth area down the road, especially if we're looking to infill. And so I think kind of classifying that appropriately now makes sense.
It was brought up.
I'm comfortable with the phrase production, distribution, and repair as a catch-all kind of descriptor. I think it sort of fits for what has been happening down there, and we could get some live work in that zone, and but still, I think that could fit into that category. So. I think you had something in your presentation a little while ago, didn't you, with another name for it? That you had?
I thought that was the name that we were.
West
Oh,
Albany?
yes, I did call it the West Albany Industrial Area.
Yeah,
right?
that,
Or
yeah,
business district.
okay. Or business, as a business district, so.
Right.
That's going to be the Soho of Albany. It's going to, you
think
can
so?
see all the
Yeah,
fancy
yeah,
lofts
yeah.
going up.
Yeah, that could be.
So if I heard Barry correctly, I think you mentioned that there may or may not be a waterfront element.
That's still to be decided. We're going to look for council direction on that question. Jeff may want to add on to this, but at the final meeting of the Waterfront Committee, we actually talked a little bit about that topic, and most of the committee members thought that still felt it was a good idea to have a separate element, because and in part because of the unique qualities of the waterfront, but also there are a large number of planning documents that deal with that area that would be difficult to integrate into the land use element.
Right, right.
So it provides an opportunity to look at, the Shore State Park Plan and all the other planning documents that are out there.
I
Well,
agree.
that was kind of my point, is that it's important enough that it either is its own element or it becomes a major part of the land use
Right.
element.
Yeah,
Right.
You know,
yeah.
Kind of pursuant to what Mr. Aldis was saying.
Yeah.
It's, an area that needs attention and deserves it.
Yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like the leaning is towards keeping it.
Yes,
perhaps,
that's
or-
been the plan since the
I'm-
beginning of the
Okay.
project, but we are, what I've always said is that we're certainly, if someone wants to take us in a different direction, we're certainly open to that and can work with that. It would change the land use element significantly, though. We'd add at least one goal, and there'd be a lot more discussion here. This is probably where most of it would go.
Well, yeah, that's where I was headed, is that if it is in here,
Right.
it's a whole topic unto itself. Yeah.
It is.
And it's a fair question, is it more appropriately integrated here? Though the opportunities that the waterfront represents, it's more than just land use. It, covers, recreation, it's transportation. It's really, one that brings them all together again.
I think we would need to be, number one, I think it's the councils, we would need to get council direction
Yeah,
on the inclusion or no inclusion of a waterfront element. One, they'll probably ask us for recommendations. And if I were asked, I would say yes, the general plan should have a waterfront element. And I really think we need to think very carefully, because it is such a controversial and it's proven to be such a difficult topic, community dividing topic in a way that I would be worried that we don't want to strategize in a way so that that element doesn't bog down and stop the whole general plan process from moving forward.
Right, at the same time, we're looking
Worried about that.
we're looking for public participation as we hold this meeting in a largely empty room. We could get some, boots on the ground here.
We could fill the room. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't know how to proceed with that, but I do, I take Bob Aldis's comment pretty seriously. I think without a waterfront committee, that the point is well taken, that it probably is falling into the general plan preparation court,
Right, so
ball court.
short of adding it to the land use element tonight, we can proceed, presuming there will be a waterfront element, and we'll be discussing that in
Oh, yeah.
turn.
And
that
part of, I guess, part of the way I think of, so one of the things we might do to make sure that it doesn't bog down us in a way is to maybe set a track for working on the waterfront element. And then if decisions get made that are shown in the waterfront element, then we would backfill those into the land use element where appropriate. That's what I'm saying. If there are things in the waterfront element, policies, actions, or whatever, in the waterfront element that look like they are going to be reflected in the land use element, I would do that later. But after we have good progress
Yeah,
on the
it
waterfront
is,
element.
it is in here as part of the first policy 1.6 reference to the waterfront.
It
And
is,
Jeff
that's
is
right.
wanting to
Jeff,
add.
yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, to clarify that our thinking at this point in time, again, until council would direct us otherwise, is to bring together all the work that's been done on the waterfront, but not and create an element or a section or whatever we end up calling it, but not necessarily doing something that's going to trigger a Measure C vote. We're not proposing to change land use policies or programs in a substantive way at this point in time. we do think that there's, it's a 20-year-old document, a lot has changed. The narrative of the Albany waterfront has changed. We can talk about the McLaughlin State Park, and we can talk about modern waterfront planning practices and programs that weren't thought of 20 years ago. We can talk about adaptation to sea level rise, all those kinds of things we think belong in the general plan someplace. But those themselves wouldn't trigger a Measure C. We're not talking about changing the
Right.
pattern of land uses. I think that is a council level decision to embark on a major change like that. And I don't get the sense that the council's interested in doing that at this point in time.
Yeah.
If I can just add to what Jeff said, because this was the focus of the Waterfront Committee's discussion when we brought this to them in April. If something like that was to be pursued in the future, you would amend the general plan most likely. So
Right.
I think the idea that we're doing a 20-year plan means it's still okay to not know the future of every place in the city, and that
Right.
there is intended to be a dynamic document,
Right.
and that at some point in that 20 years, you will most likely come back and do a general plan amendment that deals with that issue directly, that focuses just on that issue.
Yeah.
So in a way, there's a little hole in the plan for what happens in the area, but we still want to make sure we have a place for all of the policies that are currently out there that don't have a home in the general plan we have now.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to jump in with one other comment. I appreciate that the Gale Tract is a policy 4.6 under civic, institutional, and medical uses. I was wondering if it would be appropriate to also locate it under environmentally sensitive areas. And I'm thinking about the open space that's right there where the turkeys and the deer gather and the farms, because it has been made very clear to us through the various meetings that we've had with all the participants that this is a high level quality of soil and I don't know.
That's a good point.
My thinking about the Gill Track is that if I were writing this up, the first thing I'd do would be look at the adopted UC plan. I think that it is clearly their land, all of that is, and that they can exempt themselves from our jurisdiction, except for entrepreneurial kinds of activities, enterprise actions, and that we don't have too much credence to planning there that isn't in sync with what they're planning.
No, you're correct that they can do anything, with an educational purpose that they might choose. I think the general plan is our opportunity to state what our goals and hopes are for for those lands. I think there's a pretty clear understanding between the two entities.
Yeah.
But I agree with Stacy. I think it should appropriately be in here. I wrote down some general topics that I think need to be highlighted or at a very minimum, included at some place. Housing I know is in here, but specifically, the development, encouraging the development of more housing, pursuant to the goals that ABAG and others have set for us.
I think that's a good point.
They're
Very good
in the year 2020, the California Energy Code will have a zero energy mandate for all new residential units, meaning whether they're single-family homes or apartments, anything that's built new will be zero energy.
That means zero net.
That means that it's built in a highly efficient manner, and that some renewable energy source, presumably or most likely photovoltaics, will make up the difference, so that on an annually average basis, that unit of housing is using more more electricity.
Net zero.
No more electricity or energy than it's generating on site. Similarly, targeting carbon-free power, just general electricity. I mean, most of our housing stock is existing, so the efficiency is mentioned in here, but also looking for community-wide energy sources that are renewable. Sort of related to our Gill Tract conversation, but much broader throughout the city, food security and urban agriculture, I think are things that are valued here, and that could be a gateway to including the Gill Tract. And then parking, which affects land use. And by not mentioning it, are we hoping that it goes away? Well, some of us are, but so those are just some areas where I think we're already discussing them, and we will be more and more into the next 20 years. I have some specific line items, and maybe if we take these on one by one answer these questions.
I kind of react to read what I have in front of me and react. So I too have line item comments at various points in the staff report.
All right.
Nick, any further comments? Should we start then and go through the Appendix A on the staff report and page by page? You want to do that? Further general comments?
I have one other general comment, and that was, there was a just brief mention about maybe developing guidelines for each individual neighborhood, and I don't know if that's something that we would want to, those certain areas that maybe have more McGregors, or, the CMX has a language of steel, and maybe kind of starting to identify characteristics of each neighborhood architecturally that we would want to encourage. I don't know if that would be part of this and where that would fall in exactly, but also there's mention of the walkability of businesses, but I also think that the character of our schools and our education is that it's such a walkable community, and it's not even just our public schools, it's St. Mary's as well, but also how accessible we are to Cal, and so.
Commissioner Eisenman, on the Action 2C that's listed in here was intended, I think, to get at the point for the architectural prototypes. It may need to be reworded to better capture that point, and it may not belong in that section because this is mostly on residential.
I'm sorry, you said two.
Action 2C.
It's on page 4.
Yeah.
And it may be misplaced because you just mentioned the CMX, which wouldn't really fit in this since this is more talking about residential neighborhoods, but.
Yeah, I jumped to community character.
Right.
And that rather than trying to create that, an action item could be the creating of neighborhood identity for the identified districts of the city.
So I've got to ask why. Why would we do that?
Well, okay, if we're starting to identify neighborhoods based on their location, I think as designers come in and we're looking at design review guidelines, correct, about details that we're looking for, characteristics such as the porch being on the front. And I think that there could be underlying characteristics in the CMX zone that we want to encourage, or that maybe we want, I don't know, identify. And I wouldn't want to shortchange that. I'm trying to remember back to when we were talking about this, and there were two residential neighborhoods, and one was closer to San Pablo and the other one was further away, and they had slightly different languages, and we had back-to-back projects that we're reviewing, and I don't know, it came up at that time that there could be a means to kind of further give each individual neighborhood more of a characteristic, so that Albany has more identifiable moments.
I guess I would just say that I think, we do have guidelines already for what we're looking for in, residential development, residential remodel. I would not want us or the consultant to spend to sacrifice time on some of the other more important areas to an endeavor like that. I worry about being a little too prescriptive and micromanagey about the design rather than letting the character of a neighborhood grow organically within some constraints. And so maybe I'm not even addressing what you're saying. Maybe I'm talking about something different, but I wouldn't want to spend too much time on that as opposed to some of the other important things that you've
Sure.
also brought up, like the Guild Tract and DC Village, et cetera.
I guess what I'm saying is that this isn't something that would be prescriptive in this document. I think that that could be a goal for Albany as we continue to develop, that we would ultimately end up with kind of, here are certain characteristics that are inherent in this neighborhood. As it sounds like when Target came into the area, there were certain requirements that were to kind of push the design to a little bit higher level. And the little boutique auto shop that is coming in near Target also is going to have certain characteristics of that area. And I think that it could be helpful for developers, if they're coming in, we could hand them something that says, here are certain characteristics. You don't necessarily have to meet these, but it could be, there could be moments that you would want to meet that are appropriate for this neighborhood. But I'm not saying that that would be prescriptive or something that Barry would spend time developing as part of this document. That's something that Albany would develop.
I mean, I think in a way you're talking about subsequent kind of planning studies
That's
or
why it
planning
becomes,
documents.
why it becomes an action.
And I think it's a good suggestion. I can think about, I'm quite familiar with West Berkeley's plan for the West Berkeley area and how they do have industrial type of design criteria in there that led to the creation of the Pyramid Brewery to look like an industrial building. And with certain requirements for the siding, and, I know that, done for that way very much. The other buildings in West Berkeley, the MIG office and others I know, they do follow design guidelines to sort of try to reflect the industrial history of that. It's appropriate. I think, one of the mantras we've had in my thinking here, when we're looking at housing throughout the city, is that we have a big wide variety of housing types and styles. But I also think it's probably true that we do have characteristics in certain neighborhoods that kind of are dominant. Maybe to the point, I don't know, I've never really looked at it closely, but maybe to the point where we even have an historic district now that everything's over 50 years old. But there are probably, my street is almost all McGregor's.
That was one of the thoughts I had, was the McGregor's along the BART tracks that are.
That's right.
I-
And so, that there might be some value in some neighborhood characterizations.
Yeah.
I really do think so.
I think we should avoid belaboring this point.
I agree.
Because there's a lot.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah,
That's good.
I mean, I would just say that, don't feel that strongly about it. I do think I've just heard that, we're not opposed to modern residential design architecture, but then again, I think about some of the buildings built along the San Pablo and Solano corridor in which we did have more strict guidelines for design of some of those structures. So, yeah, I agree. Let's move on.
Yeah, okay.
So
All
I
right.
mentioned housing, and of course Barry has included housing as policy 1.1.
That's it.
So you can't put it any closer to the top than that.
Yeah, right up there. That's the one. Are there any comments on the various policies under Goal 1? No.
I just noted under sustainable development, you know, more pointed discussion of, not specifically the climate action plan,
Okay.
but taking action as a city to curb global climate change or fight global climate change, whatever word we want to
Yeah,
end up
I
using
think
is,
that'd be good.
Fight the good fight.
Yeah, I agree.
it's, up to wordsmithing, but to be able to include that specifically because it's climate change is clearly becoming what we are going to be dealing with the next 20 years and beyond, and
Yeah.
I should say so.
On policy 1.2, the very beginning there, talk about a balanced mix. Let me see here. It does say a balanced mix of housing and employment growth. And I get my comment was in order to get a balance in there, we need more jobs, I think. I'm pretty sure we have way more employees than we do jobs. So that would tell me that we probably need to somehow put more of an emphasis on jobs than we have in the past, I guess. I don't know where they come from, but maybe at the waterfront, who knows? On policy 1.3, you use the word shopping streets, principal shopping streets, and I like the more generic term commercial because of the CMX and the way you'd characterize that. It's not necessarily, let's see, policy 110, interagency coordination. There's so much more, it might be good to, it kind of talks about adjoining cities, which is good. But there are other places, other agencies will come up, but I think they're important. UC as a major landowner, and then coordination with the various transportation agencies and the park district as well.
Those may be more specific to those the elements of the general plan.
They come up in other elements of the general plan, but they for sure do.
Your point is a good one, and it's good that it's here.
It's good that it's here. It's
Because
good that it's
we may
good
be
that it's right
we
here.
may be an urban village by the bay, but we're surrounded by
Well,
other urban villages.
Yeah, another one of my comments, but, yeah, I see us as a city in an urban area. That coordination is really important. Okay. Anything on goal 2?
May I just add something? On goal 1, you'll note that I did not have any action items.
Right,
And
right.
that's not because I don't think there will be any. I think that they need to be developed, and I'm open to ideas, but that's something I'll probably come back with in a future draft. Specific ideas, because this tends to have very broad policies. They lend themselves less to actions than some of the policies in the next section. But probably by the time this is an actual draft general plan, there will be some
Yeah.
content there.
Yeah, so, and I did have one which was related to the housing opportunities, which would be to identify and remove real or perceived barriers to creating housing
Right.
opportunities.
I support that. And related to my comment about employment, growth in jobs. I don't know what they would be, but I think it would be good to have an action item or more than one action item in the general plan related to getting a better jobs housing balance. It works towards sustainability. It has all kinds of good things that go with it.
Prioritizing the city's, immediate action towards being a leader in climate change solutions. We are, based on our location and our population, well-suited to, trial a lot of potential solutions. Or we don't have time for trials, we have to just implement them.
Okay, on goal 2, residential neighborhoods, anyone have any detailed comments on here. I didn't,
Well, I had one that I jotted down.
I didn't mark anything.
Actually, two, now that I.
Mhm,
look
okay,
at it. Well,
mhm.
one is an action item, but, I guess, you know, I'm happy to see second units are on the list, and I
Yep.
was
Yep.
thinking that maybe they could be higher on the list.
Yeah,
But that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that it's any less important for being lower on the list.
yeah.
I realize.
Mhm.
In the action items, it could be related to the multifamily design guidelines, though I think we should make an effort to make 4 stories within the height limits allowed.
I agree.
I was still disappointed the city council changed that. It's wrong. And possibly consider going to 5 stories in our nodes.
I agree with that.
You know, Berkeley is about to build, and this is more of a mixed use, it's perhaps
Yep.
more of a business district
Mhm.
item than residential district, that second comment. Berkeley is about to go to 14 stories. Not saying that we should, nor is it a reason why we should, but in an urban environment, development becomes more feasible when higher densities are allowed. In nodes, they become nodes when they become identifiable as, you know,
Yeah.
places where more activity
Yeah.
is centered.
I had the same comment written down when we came to the nodes. I think the nodes, the one node we have now does cry out for taller buildings as well as just the distinction of being a node, so. You know, and I want to bring up, you know, historically, I think it was in the San Pablo design guidelines, but I'm not sure. But I believe we also had a node, when I was working on the zoning, we had a node at Marin and San Pablo. And it's kind of dropped by the wayside because it's UC, City Hall, and 2 gas stations. And it's like, everyone, what? And I think everyone kind of gave up on that. But there was talk about how, you know, the Gill track there would be like the main corner of Albany, the main entrance of Albany for most people,
Right.
most of us
Well,
driving in from the freeway. And it's like, geez.
Oddly, it's a anti-node. I mean, it's sort of a, but I mean that in a positive way. It's sort of, you know, open space,
Yeah.
which is like a plaza, like you would have in a, you know, major European city where you have dense development, and then there's this bit of breathing space, and it's kind of what we have.
That's
You
right.
know, not in a conscious way,
That's right.
but it's what it is.
Yeah. Anyway,
Let me just.
anything else in 2?
Yeah, I just a comment, take it as you may, take it or leave it, in general about some of the, as I read through 2 here. Second story policy 2.5 ensures second story additions to single story homes are designed to minimize increases in height and bulk. Then Keynes and Adams Street maintains Keynes and Adams is predominantly residential. And then, where was it? There was another policy, darn it, that, I don't know, although we're encouraging in some areas density and you know, the addition of housing, some of the language and some of these policies and 2 strike me as kind of contrary to that a little bit. So I just wondered if we wanted to talk at all about that, if that strikes anyone else that way.
I highlighted that as well because it seems the language is more about avoiding the second stories and pulling down the mass. And I understand that that's an important point, but it also doesn't seem like we're encouraging second story additions, which makes the community more, Well, it adds value to the community. It makes the homes more livable. So I don't know if there's a way to spin the language so that it's not only, for, you know, I'm not saying this well, I'm getting tired, but it's not just a negative thing to add a second story. Is that what you were reacting to?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can't argue really against the language. It's just kind of the feeling of the language, if that makes any sense. And then in Keynes and with regards to Keynes and Adams, I mean, those are zoned differently than
They are.
the rest of most of the rest of the residential part of Albany. So,
But they are zoned residential. I
They
think
are.
that's what this is highlighting.
Okay.
But they're zoned higher density residential. And the idea-
Okay.
The idea.
All right. Well, then that's fair.
The idea in the previous zoning ordinance was that there'd be a transition between, you know, go from commercial to high density to a little bit higher density to low density.
Mhm.
Well, up until 10 years
Happened.
ago or
Pardon?
so, up until about 10 years ago,
Yeah,
commercial was allowed.
commercial was allowed there, that's
Yeah,
true.
Fronting onto,
Is that, it was, yeah.
it was
Some
sort of
commercial,
a
some
mixed.
yeah, there was some restrictions on commercial, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
So I think that's.
We did, we did really downzone those two streets a little bit. We did the zoning ordinance.
I mean, again, it just strikes me as, I mean, that's, okay, so that's not, that's this historical action that was taken that, and I guess this is consistent with that action and this policy 2.7, but it also strikes me as somewhat anti-business, anti-commercial as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
Maybe less encouraging of some other goals that we do have.
Yeah.
Right, and at the same time, policy 1.1, increase
Housing.
housing
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah.
So I had a question
I
about
hear you.
policy 2.11, if we're, did we?
2.11?
Yes,
Okay.
and actually, I'm just curious where sidewalk repair comes in, because I think that Albany is so
Ah.
old and so many of the sidewalks are cracked, and is that
It's in
part
number
of front
6.
yard? It's in number 6?
Yeah.
Did I miss it?
6.4.
Ah, I did miss it.
Oh.
Okay, then I apologize. We
Oh,
can
well,
come back to
let me
that
look
later.
at 6.4.
But I'm glad to see, I mean, this front yard policy comes straight out of our residential design guidelines.
Right,
Yeah.
that was the source.
Yep,
And I'm happy to see it there.
you see it there, yeah. Okay. I had a note to discuss action 2C, but we already did that. We won't prolong it. The next one is goal 3, business districts. In policy 3.1, there are 2 specific FARs noted, 3.0. Are those changes? I didn't check.
So those came from the existing general plan.
Okay,
Um,
uh-huh,
And I believe, because those are higher than the zoning
Yeah.
FARs, that
okay,
and Jeff and Ann, maybe you can clarify this. My read of this is that this would include density bonuses, sort of,
yeah,
you know, if you can build up to a certain FAR, but then if you have a density bonus, this allows you to go even higher. Because 3.0 is not, I mean, it's 2.25 now.
yeah. Okay.
But that language actually
Okay,
came from,
I support that then. Mhm, that's okay.
we'll confirm that.
And then, Barry, in that same paragraph, I want to ask you just sort of a general drafting question, writing question here. And the use of which and that, you know, 2 words, which and that. You've used which a lot, or I think consistently, where when it seemed to me that the word that was more appropriate. Or is that just,
No, I can make the, I will make sure that the correct term.
is it,
If
yeah,
it's
I don't know
not.
if I'm correct or not, but I would have written it with a that in this policy and others following, and I just wasn't sure if you had a protocol that you followed with, when you're writing the general plan, with these whiches or not. So,
Maybe you need to bring in a copy of that. What is that,
I-
Robert's Rule
Yeah, I didn't check out the,
Yes,
the grammar,
the-
the
the-
grammar, I didn't,
So,
Martin style.
yeah. Yeah,
so 3.4, which discusses the intersection at Solano and San Pablo, I think it should be named as a node.
Yep.
And then 310, jumped off the page at me as, are we really supporting automotive uses? But I'm afraid we are.
yeah,
But I'd like to balance that
Okay.
by making it automotive and bicycle uses. Because we do have at least one bike store currently, and I'd love to see more. So,
yeah,
and not only, sales, but repair and
Yeah.
everything else. There are a couple of smaller
but
shops.
it can be on, doesn't have to be on San Pablo. Right?
True.
Would you want that to be a new policy or a?
Well, I was hoping to include it within this one, but obviously the one bike shop that we do have is on Solano Avenue. So it may not parallel as tidily as I hoped.
Yeah,
And we would support the continued presence because they're successful?
Well, they're successful in terms of generating sales tax, I'm sorry to
They
say.
are.
That's
They
what,
really
yeah.
are,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because I know that they also are contrary to the, well, I guess there really isn't maybe a nexus here, but they do impact the residents of Adams, I know. And perhaps this has been taken care of with other administrative action, but residents of Adams are not necessarily happy of the presence of the auto shops, so.
yeah.
Well, we
No.
recently reviewed an application for, what is it, the tire place in the CMX zone, and that's
Mhm.
not on San Pablo, so I
Right.
think that it's got to be larger. We have to address that as well.
That might be a
Well,
good
we-
point.
Don't we have, or didn't the existing general plan have a policy that encourages moving the auto uses to the CMX?
Yeah, and just to clarify, the way the policy is worded now doesn't necessarily say that those uses should be encouraged on San Pablo Avenue. It's really citywide.
Yeah, yeah.
What it says is if they are located on San Pablo Avenue,
does say
they
that.
should be designed to be consistent with the overall vision for that street as a walkable street.
Thank you, yeah. That,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, as I reread it, I think it's
Yeah.
appropriate as
Yeah.
worded.
Yeah.
And bicycles would be inappropriate to be added here.
Yeah.
And
But-
will be covered elsewhere,
Yeah.
either
They-
in
they
this
certainly
element or a
could be.
different one.
On the 3.4, the Solano, San Pablo sort of node, and I was thinking of an action item there, and that it, do something to incentivize or to meet with the owners, talk with the owners, do something to encourage economic redevelopment of that node area.
And maybe that could be built into the additional nodes
Yep.
language. action
It could be
item.
there, it could be as well, yeah.
3.14, I think earlier, Barry had referred to it as the Northern Gateway, and maybe that's a better title than Albany Bowl and vicinity. I mean, we're
Yeah.
wordsmithing
I
a little
agree.
bit here.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's a good addition, yeah.
There it is at the end of the paragraph, again.
In
Okay.
action item 3B, I had a note to encourage taller buildings in the node area.
Thank you.
And in action 3C, just a grammatical thing, something funny there in the fourth line down, I guess it should maybe read, increase transit and bicycle use, comma, while meeting the needs of local businesses, minimizing overflow problems on residential streets.
So Doug, I guess it's covered under action item 3E, building height a commercial node.
Yeah,
Um,
there it is.
Yeah. And I guess maybe it could be worded such that it's, 4 stories within 500 feet and 5 stories within 200 feet.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, yeah.
Or even just 100 feet, because that's a pretty large.
You might have someone skip.
Right,
You
right.
end up with.
We already have that problem. 100
I
feet.
think part of the problem there is the small parcels.
Yeah.
I think there's a group of pretty small land parcels there.
Well, that's
Makes
true
it-
throughout town.
It's
So-
true throughout.
And it
through
actually
everywhere.
makes it more economically feasible for someone to acquire those parcels if there's a return
That's correct.
to be gained by doing so.
That's right. Yep. Needs to have some incentives and.
Along with some parking reductions.
So what one was, probably 3 was business districts. Okay.
Great.
4, anything else there? Okay, 4. Any comments in civic, institutional, and medical? The only one I had was whether it was necessary to have action 4D, medical marijuana. I think we've done that, haven't we? Didn't we change the zoning and allow that up to 1 a couple of years ago?
We did, and then it was rescinded when a series of court cases came through that kind of muddied the waters as to the city's authority to regulate.
Uh-huh.
So Barry and I were just talking about that for the meeting. We need to go back and look at the status of those court cases to see if they've finished running their course. Basically, there were some cases that were challenging whether or not cities had authority to put the kinds of conditions of approval that our ordinance.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of side with Doug, though. I'm, inclined to take it off.
Okay.
Not include
And it's
it.
also changing so rapidly.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it may be, the voters may change it in November or June next year, who knows?
Right.
So, yeah. So I just say,
Just drop it.
drop
Okay.
it.
What policy was that?
A 4D,
Or
medical
action.
marijuana.
Oh,
Some
action,
action
okay,
items.
that's why I didn't see, it. Okay.
Right under St. Mary's.
Yeah. Oh. Okay. Okay, anything on 5? I may be the only one here, but I really disagree with the statement under 5.1, the last sentence, that the entire crest of Albany Hills shall remain a forested open space area. I know that is anticipated in the current plan for that area, the Creekside Master Plan, whatever. Looking at a long-term horizon, I'd love to see the eucalyptus go. I would love to see Albany Hill go back to grass. I think it would be very cool, and I think it'd
So
be
you're
a
really-
wonderful park up
You're
there.
really taking issue with the word forested.
Forested. I'm taking the issue
What if
with
it
that.
said if it said
Yeah.
non-urbanized?
And I
Or,
acknowledge
or
that
open, or just an open space area.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, I was on the Parks and Recreation Commission when we talked about this, and we did allow, we were not opposed to the eventual loss of the.
Oh, okay. Oh, really? That's great. I'm glad to hear that, yeah. When I've brought it up a few times in the past, it's been met with stiff resistance. That's the impression I had.
Well, at least that was our
A
action.
radical change that people were really afraid of.
Yeah, it still might be met with some resistance, but at least the commission's direction was that would be okay.
Yeah. Okay. That's my comment there. Okay, community character, section 6. Okay, now This was the one, this is where we had sidewalks in here, yeah, okay, I see 6.4.
Let me suggest that I will add sidewalk repair explicitly to 6.4 because right now sidewalk extensions refers to something else, which is curb extensions for, crossing Solano Avenue at the intersections and so forth. So the sidewalk repair will be added.
I did notice that it was in 212. You had some language there as
Okay.
well. But our sidewalks are, what, 80 years old? And if we're advocating a walkable community, we should have good walking surface.
And at least staff is undertaking efforts to try to change policy with regard to sidewalk repairs such that it'd be easier to get sidewalk repairs, possibly cheaper for residents to pay for them as well.
Well, it's getting late and I shouldn't talk, but I personally organized a program to that effect on our block. And we, in 2011, I think we used up half of Alita's budget for sidewalk repair just on Spokane Avenue by all getting together and agreeing to do it. And then we put them all together and got one bid for the whole work, all the work. And then the bidder did do individual homes so we could work with the city. And then we all got our reimbursement checks a month or two later. It worked out well. But her budget for sidewalk repair was $17,000 a year or something. We took $8,000 or $10,000. On 6.7, it talk about the Albany Farmers Market in a specific language, and I would make that more general, and in some way, although it maybe it's here to stay, but.
I think it's cited as an example.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, such as. Well, that's good. Yeah.
So that's one that we'll have to do some editing. Unfortunately, the farmer's market is not going to run this year.
Really?
It hasn't been successful, so
really?
Ecology Center decided not to. They had some competition with the
Off the grid.
Off the Grid and El Cerrito at the same time.
Yeah.
So they, after looking all over town again to try to find a location, they've decided to sit this year out at least. So the notion of a farmer's market is still an attractive one that we would support, but we just need to find a location and a date and time that doesn't compete with other nearby markets.
We're direct. Wednesdays, yeah.
I'm grasping at language. I'll just try. We're talking about retaining and enhancing elements of Albany's visual character, and I think some expression of the values relative to whether it's renewable energy or recycling or things like that. I mean, we have our little solar recycling compactors on Solano Avenue, and I would like to see that somehow expressed in the character of what we try to promote. Sorry, I didn't come with better language.
So that's TV specific that you're referring?
Elements, such as, we can use the same sort of example, renewable energy facilities, composting and recycling, electric vehicle charging stations, bicycle racks, which again, I think we're doing some of these things, but to continue to build on that. In the character of the streetscape improvements, perhaps.
If I can jump back to 6.7, I think we should specifically mention Solano Stroll because that's so much part of the character here. And then also, there's the possibility of specific blocks closing off for just a community event. I can't do that because my house our street is half Berkeley, half Albany. So we have to get approval from two
Oh,
cities.
sure you can. Berkeley would do it to you.
So they'll close off like one half or the other, but a lot of streets in our community do that. And I don't know if that's something that we want to specifically encourage. It's under programmed events or how that's categorized. There's probably a specific name for.
Resources are there to do it.
Yeah, like it's.
And it's done a lot.
Yeah, well, the street fairs are named and
Yeah.
block parties.
Block parties, thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's great. On action 6C, a street tree program. We don't have one? Is that what this is saying? We need we need one?
We don't have a master plan.
Okay.
There might be a planting program,
Uh-huh.
but
Yeah,
there's no like a master plan for how we're gonna, what the street trees should be on all the different streets. and
Okay.
What their
Mhm.
plan should be for executing on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
You pick your tree and you have it planted and it might not
Okay.
match your neighbors.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I think more, this might be more about, well, I would like it to be more about our corridors, like Marin and Stannage and Pablo, and, the major,
Have
arterial
a
streets.
specific quality or style of tree canopy.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can see
if
that.
you can
See
imagine
that.
it
Yeah.
would be,
Mhm.
that would create some really great character for some
Oh,
of these
yeah.
streets.
Sycamores on Marin, either
Yeah.
probably in Berkeley, but partly in Albany are
Yeah.
good. That's good, yeah. Okay. Ooh, we're almost done. That's the last section, isn't it? Section 6.
So
Anything
I'd just
else?
point out 6D is preservation advocacy. That's not unusual in a lot of communities, but it's new in Albany. You haven't had to
Right.
address that issue when
We never
applications
have. Yeah.
come before you.
Yep.
And we did get a piece of correspondence, I guess it was actually in response to our notice of preparation, from Jerry Holland raising that
Yep.
as something that she would advocate for.
Well, we're getting to a point where, as is noted in the first policy, we have a large inventory of buildings that are starting to fall into, review for historic preservation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's appropriate. We do not, however, have a prevailing architectural style.
We do not. We do not.
I guess it's plural. You
Yeah.
went plural on that.
Yeah.
We do have a lot of them.
Yep.
That's part of our charm. Well, I don't know where it fits exactly, but I think it's, the energy efficiency retrofitting of both the housing stock and the commercial building stock should be both a policy and an action.
Oh, the building at Memorial Hall, and I don't know how that fits in here, but Albany does not own the building, and I think a goal would be to somehow,
The Veterans Building?
yeah, the Veterans Building, to figure out, my understanding is that, and this is from Shelley, but that Alameda is willing to sell it to us for $1, but the cost, it would have to then be upgraded to
Seismic.
meet ADA and the millions of dollars needed to do that. But I think
Correct.
making that a goal somewhere, I think identifying that.
Is that appropriate in a policy statement such as this?
I don't-
Whether it would be in this element or in the community services
right.
element, it might be, there would be that, and you might also want to think about the senior center as an example. We bought a house next to the senior center with the vision of expanding the senior center. Those two would probably compete with one another for the same chunk of money that hasn't fallen out of the sky yet.
But not unrealistic to pursue both, because I think they're both worthy and.
They're both absolutely worthy,
Yeah.
but it might, Barry, you can correct me if you think otherwise, but I think that community services element would probably be a better place to pursue that.
And that's where the senior housing.
Senior
is
center,
located, Senior
yeah.
center.
I think just having it written down somewhere so it doesn't get lost.
Just a point that I'll make to, we'll have cross-references to other elements of the plan as we actually produce the document. When you read statements, it will say, see conservation element for policies on energy retrofits. I mean, some of them may rise to the point where we want to put them in more than one place, but certainly the plan is going to have multiple topics addressed in multiple places, so there'll be cross-references. We'll also have an opportunity if there's something more we want to say that doesn't necessarily fit in the policy but needs to be added to include some language underneath the policy that provides a little bit more context and information. So if you're reading that policy and you think, not sure I understand what that means, there might be a few sentences afterwards that tell you a little bit more about the intent and how it's to be applied.
If we're looking at the next 20 years, I think we could have more than 2 buildings that we want to acquire. There could be more than 2 buildings that we're looking to kind of pull into Albany's character, more than just a senior care facility.
No, that's right.
Or bring online
in fact,
community service.
And Nick would probably be able to, probably know from work on Parks and Rec, but I imagine that there's probably like a community services need, the needs that are unmet, that need buildings. Probably is a kind of a capital program for the Parks and Rec. It's kind of what you're talking about. Now, it might be that you buy the Veterans Building and you renovate it and fix it up and it becomes a community building. I don't know.
I see that the language I'm using is not addressing the policy, and I appreciate that you're putting the spin on, you're packaging it.
Yeah, right. Sort of to the, what are the needs? What are the recreational facilities needs, I guess is what I'm looking at.
Yeah, that's as we talk about the policy, use more facilities.
Yep.
So, Barry, could you characterize for us the purpose of Appendix B? Is that a required
No,
piece,
that
or
was.
is that just more?
It's just carried over for reference from the last.
For reference.
The last study session.
But that's not something that gets included in the final general plan? Or
No, it's
submitted
not.
to
It
the
will go
state or
away.
anything? Okay. Thank you, that's,
That's useful.
okay.
Anything else in the general plan? I think it was a very good discussion, and Barry, thanks again for pulling it all together. And
And the next.
You've done a nice job, again, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The next topic that we will be coming back to you with is transportation. So we'll have a similar set of policy and action statements for transportation, and we have a lot of existing plans to draw from to build that. So that'll be at your main meeting.
Does transportation go to the Traffic and Safety Commission too?
They will see it actually a week before you see it.
Before we do,
Right.
okay. Oh, that's good. All right. So will we see the same thing, or we'll see one that's been edited after they meet?
I think the meetings are less than a week apart, so you may have a report out on what they said, but I don't think you'll see edited policies.
Okay, that's good. That sounds appropriate. Great. All right. Anything else from Barry or staff? Okay, where's our agenda here? Is that the last item? Announcements we have. Any announcements? Measure D working group.
We will have
I'm
our-
not a member of that. I'd like a report. Am I the only one?
You could be a member. Just show up.
So we met last week to go over revisions to our parking policy matrix. However, last week also, the Albany schools were on spring break, so our attendance, which was normally pretty robust, was a bit limited. We had 3 members of our subcommittee, including Commissioner Arkin. So we're going to have one final meeting with the expanded group next Wednesday, April 30th. And it starts at 7:30 because the State of the City address is prior to that at 6 o'clock, 6 to 7.
I better double check when it's the Chamber of Commerce sponsors this annual State of the City presentation. So it just kind of, room logistics, it made the most sense to piggyback off of that meeting, and there may be food left over. So, bonus.
Okay. right. Anything else?
We do have a couple of other announcements. We wanted to let you know that the notice of preparation deadline has been extended to May 23rd. So we will still be receiving comments for the EIR up until that point.
Oh, on the court ruling? Sure. Today, as you know, there was a legal challenge to the city's housing element. And today the judge issued there was a court hearing this afternoon. The judge, actually before the hearing yesterday, published a tentative ruling basically deferring any action until the State Housing Community Development Department certifies the housing element, which we hope that they will do shortly. And kind of our interpretation of the ruling is basically the judge is deferring to HCD to make an evaluation of whether it's the housing element is adequate or not. And so we're pleased with that ruling. We think we have complied with, we think we have a good housing element. We think we fully responded to Barry doing all the work, has fully responded to the issues. We, as giving ourselves, Ann and I, too much credit, we've fully responded to the issues, and that we have no reason to believe HCD won't certify it. There'll still be some legal procedures to sort out, and whether or not the plaintiffs will modify or amend their complaint in response to HCD's anticipated certification, we don't know. So it's not completely over, but it was at least what we're considering a favorable ruling by the judge. So we feel pretty good about that.
Well, we in this case is the citizens of Albany, the city of Albany, all of us collectively. But thank you, thank you, thank you. We'll see where it goes.
Anything else? We'll adjourn the meeting till May 14th is our next meeting. I'll be out of town, be bicycling in Spain.
Ooh,
But
very nice.
But I get back the 15th, I think. But Nick, I guess you'll be chair.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
My first time.
Okay.
I'll try to behave myself more than I have tonight.
That's good.